Hey there, storytellers and story lovers. This is Harry FLAX. Prepare yourselves for today's incredible narrative. What if the Goblin King blood-tested Harry at age 6 and declared war on Dumbledore for 18 theft violations against Potter Heir? A quick reminder, your likes, comments, and subscriptions are the fuel that keeps this channel running. Thank you for being awesome. Let's begin this journey together. Chapter 1, Blood and Gold. 6-year-old Harry Potter curled into a tight ball inside his cupboard under the stairs, trying to ignore the stabbing pain in his ribs. Uncle Vernon had been especially angry tonight. Harry had accidentally dropped a plate while washing dishes, and his punishment had been swift and brutal. Freak! Vernon had roared, his meaty hand connecting with Harry's small body repeatedly. Can't even do the simplest tasks right. No food for 3 days. Now in the darkness, Harry bit his lip to keep from crying. He'd learned early that tears only made things worse. His stomach growled painfully. He hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, and that had only been a piece of toast. The Dursleys had gone to bed hours ago, leaving him locked in his cupboard. I wish someone would take me away, Harry whispered to the darkness. Anyone. Please. Something warm stirred inside Harry's chest. At first, he thought it was just hunger pains, but then a golden glow began to emanate from his skin. Startled, Harry uncurled and stared at his hands, now glowing with soft golden light. The light grew brighter, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. What? He gasped, but before he could finish the thought, the golden light enveloped him completely. Harry felt a pull behind his navel, like being yanked by an invisible hook, and suddenly the cupboard disappeared around him. Colors and shapes blurred as he spun through what felt like a tunnel of light. His stomach lurched, and he closed his eyes against the disorienting sensation. Just as suddenly as it began, the spinning stopped. Harry crashed onto a hard marble floor, the impact sending fresh waves of pain through his injured ribs. "Intruder!" shouted a harsh voice. Harry forced his eyes open. He lay sprawled on a polished stone floor in a vast hall with soaring ceilings. All around him stood small, fierce-looking creatures with pointed ears and sharp teeth. They wore gleaming armor and held wicked-looking weapons pointed directly at him. "I'm sorry," Harry stammered, trying to push himself up but collapsing from the pain. "I don't know how I got here." One of the creatures stepped forward, its dark eyes narrowed suspiciously. "A human child? How did you breach our wards?" "I don't know," Harry repeated, fear making his voice shake. "I was in my cupboard, and then, his magic is unstable," interrupted another creature, this one wearing a medallion of gold over its armor. "And he bears injuries. Many injuries." The creatures exchanged glances, their weapons still raised. The one with the medallion barked something in a language Harry didn't understand, and 2 others rushed from the hall. "What is your name, wizard child?" asked the creature with the medallion. "Harry Potter, sir," Harry answered, trying to sit up again and succeeding this time despite the pain. The room went utterly silent. Every creature froze, staring at him with widened eyes. "Potter? Harry Potter?" The medallion-wearing creature stepped closer, peering at Harry's forehead. "Show me your scar, child." Harry hesitantly pushed his unruly hair back, revealing the lightning bolt scar that had always been there. The creature inhaled sharply. "Bring the king. Now." One of the guards raced away, and the medallion-wearer knelt beside Harry. "I am Sharptooth, head of security for Gringotts Bank. You have somehow operated into the heart of Goblin territory, Mr. Potter." "Goblins?" Harry whispered, looking around with new eyes. "Like from fairy tales?" Sharptooth's lips twisted in what might have been a smile. "We are quite real, I assure you. The question is, how did you bypass our anti-apparition wards? Even adult wizards cannot transport themselves directly into our halls." Before Harry could respond, not that he had an answer, the massive doors at the end of the hall swung open. A goblin entered who made all the others straighten to attention. Though not much taller than the others, he carried himself with unmistakable authority. His armor gleamed gold rather than silver, and a circlet of what looked like rubies sat upon his brow. "So," the newcomer said, his voice surprisingly deep, "this is Harry Potter." "Yes, King Ragnarok," Sharptooth confirmed with a bow. Harry tried to stand in the presence of royalty as his aunt had always insisted was proper, but a sharp pain in his side made him gasp and fall back. Ragnarok's eyes narrowed. "The child is injured." It wasn't a question. "Yes, your majesty," said Sharptooth. "And his magical core shows signs of severe distress. It appears his magic transported him here in response to immediate danger." Ragnarok approached and knelt beside Harry, studying him with penetrating black eyes. "Who has harmed you, young wizard?" Harry hesitated, years of the Dursleys' threats making him reluctant to speak. My uncle," he finally admitted in a small voice. "I broke a plate." Something dangerous flashed in Ragnarok's eyes. "A plate," he repeated flatly. "And for this, your guardians caused injuries severe enough to trigger ancient family magic?" Harry blinked in confusion. "Family magic? I don't understand." Ragnarok exchanged a glance with Sharptooth. "The Potter family has held accounts with Gringotts for 7 centuries, child. Your ancestors placed powerful protective enchantments on their bloodline. If you were brought here by that magic, your life must have been in genuine danger." "Oh," Harry said, not knowing how else to respond. The concept of family magic, of having a family with history, was entirely new to him. "Healer Bonecrusher," Ragnarok called, and a female goblin hurried forward. "Tend to the boy's injuries immediately. Then we shall conduct a full heritage test." The healer approached Harry, her eyes clinically assessing his condition. "I need to examine you properly, young wizard. This may feel strange, but it won't hurt." She waved her hands over Harry in complex patterns. A soft blue glow emanated from her palms, washing over him. Harry felt a warm tingling sensation as the light seeped into his skin. The healer's expression darkened as she completed her scan. "Multiple fractured ribs, your majesty. Malnutrition. Evidence of numerous prior injuries improperly healed. And..." She paused, her eyes widening, "magical bindings. Strong ones. Nearly 60% of his core is blocked." Ragnarok's face became a mask of fury. "Blocked? Who would dare?" "The magical signature is powerful," Bonecrusher replied grimly. "And old. Albus Dumbledore, if I'm not mistaken." Harry felt lost in the conversation. "Who's Albus Dumbledore?" The goblins exchanged another significant look. "Someone who has much to answer for, it seems," Ragnarok said carefully. "Healer, take the boy to the medical chamber. Heal his physical injuries. I want a full heritage and magical assessment prepared immediately." "Yes, your majesty." The healer helped Harry to his feet. "Come, child. Let's fix those ribs." Harry walked gingerly beside her, still trying to process everything happening. Goblins. Magic. A bank. His head spun with questions, but the pain in his body made it hard to focus. The medical chamber turned out to be a room filled with crystal beds that glowed with soft light. Bonecrusher helped Harry onto one of them. "Lie still," she instructed. "The crystals will heal your physical injuries first." Harry obeyed, sinking into the surprisingly comfortable bed. The crystals brightened around him, and a pleasant warmth spread through his body. The pain in his ribs began to fade almost immediately. "Why is Mr. Dumbledore blocking my magic?" Harry asked as the healer worked. "And how did I get here?" Bonecrusher's mouth set in a grim line. "Those are excellent questions, young Potter. Questions that will have answers very soon." She waved her hand, and a golden potion appeared. "Drink this. It will help restore what those muggles starved from you." "Muggles? Non-magical humans. Your relatives, I presume. Harry nodded and accepted the potion. It tasted like warm honey and cinnamon, instantly filling him with energy he hadn't felt in years. Wow, he breathed. That's amazing. Bonecrusher almost smiled. Goblin healing is superior to wizard methods in many ways. Rest now. The king will want to speak with you once your body is stable. Harry closed his eyes, letting the healing magic work. For the first time in his memory, he felt safe. When Harry woke, he felt better than he ever had in his life. The constant aches and pains that he'd grown so accustomed to were gone. Even his vision seemed clearer, though he still wore his taped-together glasses. Ragnar stood at the foot of the crystal bed, watching him with those intense black eyes. "How do you feel, Harry Potter?" the Goblin King asked. Harry sat up, marveling at the ease of movement. "Good. Really good, sir. Thank you." Ragnar nodded. "The physical damage has been repaired, though the malnutrition will require ongoing treatment." His expression grew more serious. "But there are other, more concerning issues we must address. Are you strong enough to walk?" "Yes, sir." Harry slid off the bed, standing tall without pain for the first time in recent memory. "Then follow me. It's time for some truth." Harry followed the king through winding corridors of polished stone. Goblin guards stood at attention as they passed, their eyes tracking Harry with curiosity and something like respect. They entered a circular chamber with a single stone table at its center. On the table lay a golden dagger, a crystal bowl, and a blank piece of parchment that seemed to shimmer slightly. "This is the Chamber of Inheritance," Ragnar explained. "Here, we will discover exactly who you are, Harry Potter, and what has been done to you." Another goblin awaited them, this one ancient-looking with spectacles perched on his long nose. "This is Gornik, our Master of Records," Ragnar said. "He will conduct the test." Gornik bowed to Harry. "Mr. Potter. For this test, we will need 3 drops of your blood freely given. The blood will interact with the enchanted parchment to reveal your complete heritage, magical abilities, and any spells currently affecting you." Harry glanced at the dagger nervously. "It will only prick your finger," Gornik assured him. "The cut will heal instantly." After a moment's hesitation, Harry nodded. "Okay." Gornik handed him the golden dagger. 3 drops into the crystal bowl, if you please." Harry carefully pricked his finger with the dagger's tip. It stung for just a second, and 3 drops of bright red blood fell into the bowl. True to Gornik's word, the cut sealed itself immediately. The blood in the bowl began to shimmer and glow. Gornik poured it over the parchment, where instead of staining it, the blood seemed to sink into the material. Red lines spread across the parchment, forming words and symbols. Gornik studied the parchment, his eyes growing wider by the second. "Your Majesty," he said finally, his voice tight with barely controlled rage, "you need to see this." Ragnar moved to examine the parchment. As his eyes scanned the contents, his expression darkened dangerously. The air in the chamber seemed to crackle with tension. "This," the Goblin King growled, "is an outrage." "What is it?" Harry asked, anxiety building in his chest. "What's wrong?" Ragnar looked at him, and Harry was startled to see what looked like genuine sympathy in those fierce eyes. "Young Potter, according to this test, Albus Dumbledore has committed no fewer than 18 violations against your inheritance. He sealed your parents' will illegally, diverted funds from your family vaults, placed multiple blocks on your magic, and..." Ragnar paused, seeming to struggle with his anger, "placed you with abusive Muggle relatives against your parents' explicit wishes." Harry felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath him. "My parents had a will," he whispered. "Indeed. And it specifically stated you were never to be placed with Petunia Dursley and her husband under any circumstances." Ragnar pointed to a section of the parchment. "There were 5 families named as your potential guardians before the Dursleys would ever be considered." "Who?" Harry asked, his voice small. Sirius Black, your godfather. Alice and Frank Longbottom, your godmother and her husband. Remus Lupin, a close friend of your father's. Minerva McGonagall, your mother's mentor. And only if all these were unavailable, Andromeda and Ted Tonks. Ragnar's eyes glittered. Not once were the Dursleys mentioned except to explicitly forbid your placement with them. Harry struggled to process this information. His whole life, all the suffering, all the loneliness, had been unnecessary. Illegal? There's more, Gornick said grimly. The magical blocks. Ragnar nodded. The test shows powerful constraints on your magic, placed when you were 15 months old, the night your parents died. Furthermore, there is a parasitic magical entity attached to your scar. A what? Harry's hand flew to his forehead. A fragment of dark magic, Gornick explained. Something that should never be found in a living being, especially not a child. Can you remove it? Harry asked, suddenly desperate to get whatever this thing was out of him. Yes, Ragnar said firmly. The process will not be pleasant, but we have the means. The blocks on your magic can also be removed, though that will require a separate ritual. Harry straightened his shoulders. I want it all gone. Everything that's not supposed to be there. Ragnar's mouth curved in what might have been approval. Spoken like a true Potter. Very well. He turned to Gornick. Prepare the Purification Chamber. And summon the War Council. War Council. Harry echoed uncertainly. Ragnar's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. Yes, young Potter. What has been done to you constitutes not only crimes against a wizarding heir but direct theft from accounts under Goblin protection. By our laws, such actions are considered acts of war. Harry's eyes widened. You're declaring war. Because of me? Not against all wizards, Ragnar clarified. Our quarrel is specifically with Albus Dumbledore and any who assisted him in these violations. The Goblin Nation takes its banking responsibilities very seriously, Mr. Potter. When we agree to protect a family's gold, we protect the family as well. Harry felt overwhelmed but strangely comforted by the fierce protectiveness in the Goblin's voice. No one had ever stood up for him before. What happens now? He asked. Now, Ragnar said, we cleanse you of foreign magics, restore your birthright, and then, his sharp teeth gleamed in what was definitely not a smile, we make Albus Dumbledore regret the day he crossed the Goblin Nation and the House of Potter. The Purification Chamber looked nothing like Harry expected. Instead of the clinical, crystal-filled healing room, this space was raw stone carved with thousands of runes that pulsed with blue light. In the center stood a shallow pool filled with silver liquid that wasn't quite water. This will be unpleasant, Healer Bonecrusher warned as she directed Harry to remove his oversized hand-me-downs and don a simple white robe. But necessary. The parasite has been feeding on your magic for years. Will it hurt? Harry asked, trying to sound brave. The healer considered him thoughtfully. Yes. But you will not face it alone. King Ragnar himself will anchor the ritual. Harry nodded, squaring his shoulders. I'm ready. Ragnar entered, now dressed in ceremonial robes covered in glowing runes similar to those on the walls. 6 other goblins followed him, each carrying a different ritual item. Harry Potter, Ragnar addressed him formally, do you consent to this purification ritual of your own free will, understanding that it will cause you pain but ultimately healing? I do, Harry replied firmly. Then enter the pool and lie back. The silver water will support you. Harry stepped into the pool. The silver liquid felt strangely warm and thick, almost like floating in honey. He let himself recline as instructed, surprised when the liquid indeed supported him effortlessly. The ritual goblins took positions around the pool, creating a perfect circle. Each began to chant in the harsh, guttural language Harry had heard earlier. The runes on the walls brightened in response, their blue light intensifying until the entire chamber pulsed with it. Ragnar approached the edge of the pool directly above Harry's head. He held out his hands, palms down, over Harry's scar. "We call upon the ancient magics," Ragnar intoned, his voice resonating with power. "Magics older than wizard or goblin. We seek to cleanse this child of that which does not belong. To remove the parasite that feeds upon his life and magic." The silver liquid began to heat up, becoming almost uncomfortably warm. Harry forced himself to remain still. "Show yourself, fragment of darkness," Ragnar commanded. Pain exploded in Harry's scar, white-hot agony that made him cry out. The liquid around him bubbled and churned. Through watering eyes, Harry saw something black and oily begin to seep from his forehead, rising like smoke from his scar. The black substance writhed in the air above him, seemingly fighting against the pull of the ritual. It formed a distorted face for just a moment, snake-like, with glaring red eyes, before letting out an unearthly shriek. "You do not belong here," Ragnar growled at the manifestation. "Return to your master, fragment of Tom Marvolo Riddle." The black mass shrieked again, thrashing wildly. Harry felt as though his head might split open from the pain, but he gritted his teeth, somehow knowing it was vital that he endure. "By blood and gold, by stone and steel, by the ancient pact between magic and her children," Ragnar continued, his voice rising, "I command you, begone." The Goblin King clapped his hands together above Harry's head, and a shockwave of golden light exploded outward. The black substance seemed to implode, collapsing in on itself with a final, terrible wail before disappearing entirely. The instant it vanished, the pain in Harry's scar stopped. The relief was so sudden and complete that Harry gasped. The silver liquid cooled, soothing his overheated skin. "It is done," Ragnar announced, sounding slightly winded. "The soul fragment is destroyed." "Soul fragment?" Harry questioned weakly, trying to sit up in the pool. "A most vile piece of magic," Bonecrusher said, helping him out of the silver liquid. "A Horcrux, a piece of Voldemort's soul that attached to you the night he tried to kill you." "Voldemort? The wizard who killed my parents?" Ragnar nodded grimly. "The same. I suspect Dumbledore knew of its existence, which explains many of his actions. Though it justifies none of them." Harry touched his scar, finding it cooler than it had ever been. "Why didn't he just remove it like you did?" "An excellent question," Ragnar said, his tone suggesting he already had theories, none of them favorable to Dumbledore. "Perhaps he believed it could not be done without sacrificing you. Or perhaps—" He trailed off, his expression darkening further. "Perhaps he found it useful to keep you connected to the Dark Lord," Bonecrusher finished bluntly. Harry felt sick at the implication. "So what happens now?" "Now," Ragnar said, "we remove the blocks on your magic. Then, young Potter, you begin your education, in magic, in your heritage, and in the ways of both wizard and goblin. For you cannot fight your enemies if you do not know your own strength." Harry looked around at the goblins who had participated in the ritual, all watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to something approaching respect. "Why are you helping me?" he asked Ragnar directly. "I don't have any money to pay you." The Goblin King actually laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "No money? Harry Potter, you are the sole heir to one of the wealthiest wizarding families in Britain. Your family vault contains more gold than you could spend in 3 lifetimes." Harry stared in shock. "I'm rich." "Extremely," Ragnar confirmed. "Which is precisely why Dumbledore has been helping himself to your vaults. But no more. From this day forward, the House of Potter is under the direct protection of the Goblin Nation." A fierce pride swelled in Harry's chest, pride and something else he couldn't quite name. For the first time in his memory, he felt like he belonged somewhere. "Thank you," he said simply. Ragnar nodded once, acknowledging the gratitude. "Rest now. The removal of the magic blocks will occur tomorrow, after you've recovered your strength. Then your real education begins." Albus Dumbledore paced his office at Hogwarts, his normally twinkling eyes grave with concern. The instruments monitoring the wards at Privet Drive had gone haywire hours ago, indicating that Harry Potter was no longer there. How? He muttered to himself. The blood ward should have held. The boy is only 6. A silver device on his desk, which had been spinning contentedly for years, suddenly stopped and crumbled into dust. Albus froze, staring at it in alarm. That particular instrument had been tied to the magic-suppressing blocks he'd placed on Harry's core. Impossible, he whispered. At that moment, a goblin messenger materialized in his office with a loud crack, something that should have been prevented by Hogwarts anti-apparition wards. Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, the Goblin announced formally, the Goblin Nation hereby serves you notice of war. Dumbledore's eyes widened. On what grounds? The Goblin smiled unpleasantly, revealing pointed teeth. 18 counts of theft from the Potter vaults. Illegal suppression of the Potter heir's magic. Violation of the Potter wills. Endangerment of a Goblin-protected heir. The list continues, but those are the highlights. This is a misunderstanding, Dumbledore began, his mind racing. As Harry's magical guardian, you were never his magical guardian, the Goblin cut him off. The wills explicitly named Sirius Black, who never received a trial despite your position as Chief Warlock. Another violation we're investigating. Dumbledore felt a chill run down his spine. This was bad. Very bad. Where is Harry now? He demanded. Safe, the Goblin replied simply. And remaining so. Under the King's personal protection. The boy must return to his relatives. It's vital for his protection. The Muggles who broke his ribs for dropping a plate, the Goblin interrupted again, voice dripping with disdain. Who starved him regularly? Those protections. Dumbledore closed his eyes briefly. He hadn't known it was that bad. He'd suspected the Dursleys weren't kind, but actual abuse. The Goblin Nation has severed all financial and warding contracts with Hogwarts School and the Dumbledore family, the messenger continued. Your personal vaults have been frozen pending investigation. A full accounting of your actions will be presented to the International Confederation of Wizards within the week. You cannot possibly, Dumbledore started. We can and we have, the Goblin cut him off once more. The King sends a personal message, the boy will know everything. Every manipulation. Every theft. Every lie. And when he enters the wizarding world, it will be with the full knowledge of what you've done. With that, the Goblin disappeared, leaving Dumbledore standing in his office with the ruins of his carefully constructed plan scattered around him like the dust of the broken monitoring device. Harry woke in a comfortable chamber that had been prepared for him within Gringotts. For a moment, he thought he'd dreamed the whole thing, the escape from the Dursleys, the Goblins, the ritual. Then he noticed the stone ceiling above him and the lack of pain in his body. It was real. All of it. A knock came at the door, and Griphook, a young goblin assigned as Harry's guide, entered. Good morning, Mr. Potter, Griphook said. The King requests your presence for the block removal ritual when you've eaten. Harry sat up, noticing a tray of food beside his bed, more food than the Dursleys would give him in 3 days. Good morning. Thank you for everything you're all doing for me. Griphook looked momentarily surprised by the gratitude. It is a matter of honor for the nation, he said finally. The wizard Dumbledore has violated our banking treaties. Such things cannot stand. Harry nodded and began eating the unfamiliar but delicious food. Griphook remained, seemingly curious. Have you never seen a human eat before? Harry asked after a moment. Not a young one, Griphook admitted. And not one who treats goblins with respect. Harry frowned. Do most wizards treat goblins badly? Most consider us beneath them, Griphook said matter-of-factly. Useful for banking but otherwise inferior. That's stupid, Harry said bluntly. You've been nicer to me than any humans ever were. Griphook's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. The King believes you may be different. That you might build bridges where others have built walls. Harry wasn't entirely sure what that meant, but he nodded anyway. I'd like to learn more about goblins. About magic too, of course, but nobody ever teaches humans about goblins, do they? Not correctly, certainly. Griphook seemed increasingly intrigued. If you're serious, I could arrange instruction in goblin history and customs alongside your magical education. I'd like that, Harry said sincerely. Griphook nodded, looking pleased. Finish your meal. The ritual awaits, and afterward, your education begins. The block removal ritual took place in yet another chamber, this one dominated by a large circular platform inscribed with golden runes. Harry, once again wearing the white ritual robe, stood in the center of the platform while Ragnarok and 7 goblin ritual masters took positions around the edge. These blocks were placed when you were an infant, Ragnarok explained. Your magic has been fighting them ever since, which explains your accidental apparition to Gringotts. Removing them will release a significant amount of magical energy. It may be overwhelming at first. What should I do? Harry asked nervously. Stand still. Let the magic flow naturally. Don't fight it. Ragnarok's expression softened fractionally. Your magic knows what to do, Harry Potter. Trust it. The ritual began with deep, rhythmic chanting in the goblin tongue. Golden light rose from the inscribed runes, swirling around Harry like luminous smoke. He felt a warmth spreading from his core outward, pleasant at first but quickly becoming uncomfortable. The first block breaks, announced one of the ritual masters as a visible snap of energy shuddered through the golden light. Harry gasped as power surged through him. It felt like a dam breaking, releasing a flood of energy he'd never known he possessed. Second block, called another goblin. Another surge, stronger than the first. Harry's skin tingled all over, his hair standing on end with static electricity. One by one, the blocks shattered, each release more intense than the last. By the 5th, Harry was floating several inches above the platform, golden light pouring from his eyes and fingertips. Final block, Ragnarok intoned. The core suppression. This time, the release was explosive. Harry cried out as raw magic erupted from him in a shockwave that knocked the ritual masters back several steps. Only Ragnarok held his position, bracing against the magical wind. For a moment that felt like eternity, Harry hung suspended in the air, magic swirling around him in visible currents. Then, gradually, the storm calmed. The golden light receded, sinking back into his skin, and Harry gently lowered to the platform. When he opened his eyes, every goblin in the chamber was staring at him with expressions of astonishment. What? Harry asked, suddenly self-conscious. Did something go wrong? No, Ragnarok said slowly. Nothing went wrong. But I have never, in 273 years, witnessed such raw magical potential in a child. Dumbledore didn't just block your magic, Harry Potter. He tried to contain a tempest in a teacup. Harry looked down at his hands, which still seemed to shimmer faintly with golden energy. So I'm powerful. Extraordinarily so, confirmed Healer Bonecrusher, approaching with a diagnostic crystal. Your magical core is still stabilizing, but initial readings suggest you may be among the strongest wizards of this age. Perhaps any age. Which explains Dumbledore's actions, Ragnarok added grimly. Power like yours, unbridled and uncontrolled by him, would have interfered with whatever plans he had for you. Harry felt overwhelmed. Yesterday, he'd been a freak, a burden, unwanted and unloved. Today, he was apparently wealthy, powerful, and important enough for both goblins and the greatest wizard of the age to concern themselves with his future. I don't know anything about being a wizard, he admitted. I didn't even know magic was real until yesterday. That, said Ragnarok with unexpected gentleness, is about to change. Over the next week, Harry's education began in earnest. Each morning started with goblin combat training, less because they expected him to fight and more to build his physical strength after years of malnutrition. Griphook, assigned as his primary instructor, taught him the basics of goblin-style hand-to-hand combat. Wizards rely too heavily on their wands, Griphook explained as he demonstrated a defensive stance. Take away their wand, and most are helpless. A goblin warrior is never helpless. Harry, sore but determined, mimicked the stance. So I should learn to fight without magic too. Precisely. Griphook circled him, correcting his posture. Magic is a tool, not a crutch. A true warrior understands when to use each weapon in their arsenal. Afternoons were dedicated to magical theory. Without a wand, Harry couldn't perform wizard spells yet, but the goblins taught him about magical cores, the flow of power, and the fundamentals of different magical disciplines. Intention, explained Steelclaw, his magical instructor, is the heart of all magic. Wands help wizards focus that intention, but the power comes from within. Harry concentrated on the feather in front of him. After a week of attempting wandless levitation, he'd managed to make it twitch occasionally. Feel your magic, Steelclaw continued. It responds to your will. Harry closed his eyes, reaching for that warm reservoir of power he could now sense inside himself. Carefully, he extended his hand toward the feather, imagining it rising into the air. Up, he whispered. To his astonishment, the feather didn't just twitch, it shot upward, sticking to the ceiling with enough force to embed itself in the stone. Steelclaw's eyes widened. Well, he said after a moment, it seems you found your intention. Evenings were spent learning wizarding and goblin history with Gornik, the records keeper. These sessions fascinated Harry the most, especially when they covered the Potter family history. The Potters descend from the Peveril line, Gornik told him, showing ancient family trees on enchanted parchment. They've been innovators in magic for centuries, particularly in potion-making and battle transfiguration. Were my parents good at magic? Harry asked eagerly. Your father excelled in transfiguration and dueling, Gornik replied. Your mother was a prodigy in charms and potions. Together, they defied the Dark Lord 3 times before. He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. Before he killed them, Harry finished quietly. It's okay. I know they were murdered. Gornik nodded solemnly. What you may not know is why Voldemort targeted your family specifically. There was a reason. Harry leaned forward, hungry for information. A prophecy, Gornik said. One that Dumbledore heard and partially shared with your parents. We've only pieced together fragments from the Potter will and our intelligence, but it referred to a child born as the 7th month dies, marked by the Dark Lord as his equal. Harry touched his scar. Me. Indeed. Though interestingly, the prophecy could have applied to another child, Neville Longbottom, born the day before you. Yet Voldemort chose you. Why? That, said Gornik, is a question even we haven't answered. But it may explain Dumbledore's unusual interest in controlling your life. He believes you have some role to play in Voldemort's ultimate defeat. Harry frowned. But Voldemort's already gone. He died when he tried to kill me. Gornik exchanged a glance with Griphook, who had joined them for the history lesson. The Horcrux we removed from your scar suggests otherwise. No truly dead wizard could maintain such a soul anchor. You think he's still out there? Harry felt a chill despite the warmth of the chamber. In some form, Griphook confirmed. Which means your education is not merely about your heritage, Harry Potter. It's about your survival. 2 weeks after Harry's arrival at Gringotts, Ragnarok summoned him to the king's private study. Unlike the formal throne room where they'd first met, this space was smaller, lined with books and maps, with a large desk carved from a single piece of dark stone. Sit, Harry, Ragnarok said, gesturing to a chair sized for a human. Harry sat, noting that this was the first time the king had used his first name alone. Your progress has been remarkable, Ragnarok began. Your instructors report that you absorb knowledge like a sponge. Particularly impressive given your previous environment. Thank you, Your Majesty, Harry replied, the formal address now second nature. The Dursleys didn't like me asking questions or doing well in school. Here, I can actually learn. Ragnar nodded, his expression darkening briefly at the mention of the Dursleys. Which brings me to why I've summoned you. We need to discuss your future. My future? Yes. While you are welcome within Gringotts for as long as necessary, a growing wizard needs more than stone walls and goblin training. Ragnar steepled his fingers. We've begun legal proceedings against Dumbledore. His position as Chief Warlock has been suspended pending investigation, though he remains headmaster of Hogwarts for now. Does he know where I am? Harry asked, unable to keep the anxiety from his voice. He knows you're with us, though not your exact location within Gringotts. He has attempted to gain access 3 times, citing his position as your magical guardian, a position we've legally challenged. Harry set his jaw. I don't want to go back to the Dursleys. And I don't want Dumbledore controlling my life. On both counts, we agree, Ragnar assured him. Which is why we've begun the process of locating your godfather, Sirius Black. My godfather? Harry straightened in his chair. Gornick mentioned him. He said Dumbledore left him in prison without a trial. Precisely. Our investigators have confirmed that Black was imprisoned in Azkaban, the wizard prison, without due process. He was accused of betraying your parents to Voldemort and murdering 12 Muggles, but never given the opportunity to defend himself. Can you get him out? Ragnar's teeth gleamed in a predatory smile. We already have the legal documentation prepared. As a minor with no legal guardian, you have the right to request a trial for your godfather under Clause 73 of the Wizengamot Charter. Dumbledore, as Chief Warlock, should have ensured this happened years ago. His failure to do so is yet another violation we're adding to the list. Hope bloomed in Harry's chest. A godfather, someone who had been chosen by his parents to care for him if anything happened to them. Someone who might actually want him. How long will it take? He asked eagerly. Ordinarily, the wizarding legal system moves at a glacial pace, Ragnar replied. But with the threat of Goblin War and the public relations nightmare Dumbledore faces if our accusations become widely known, I expect movement within days rather than months. And then? And then, young Potter, you will have a proper wizard guardian who can teach you the human aspects of magic while we continue your goblin education. The best of both worlds, as you humans say. Harry couldn't help the grin that spread across his face. That sounds brilliant. Ragnar's expression softened fractionally. You have faced great adversity, Harry Potter. Greater than any child should endure. Yet you remain resilient, eager to learn, and remarkably free of bitterness. Your parents would be proud. The simple statement hit Harry like a physical blow. No one had ever told him his parents would be proud of him. According to the Dursleys, they had been worthless drunks who'd gotten themselves killed in a car crash. I wish I could remember them, he said quietly. Memory potions exist that might help recover early childhood memories, Ragnar said thoughtfully. Something to explore when you're a bit older. For now, know that their legacy lives in you, not just in your magic or your vault, but in your character. The king rose, indicating their meeting was concluding. Continue your studies. When Black is freed, we will introduce you. Until then, consider Gringotts your sanctuary. Harry stood, bowing in the goblin style he'd been taught. Thank you for everything, your majesty. As he turned to leave, Ragnar added, oh, and Harry. Starting tomorrow, Griphook will begin teaching you gobbledygook, our language. I believe you're the first wizard in 7 centuries to receive such instruction. The significance of this honor wasn't lost on Harry. I'll make you proud, he promised. Ragnar's expression was unreadable, but he inclined his head slightly. I believe you will. 3 days later, Harry was practicing wandless magic with Steelclaw when Griphook burst into the training chamber, his normally composed demeanor visibly excited. They're bringing Black in for questioning, he announced. The Wizengamot couldn't ignore our legal petition, especially after we leaked certain details to the Daily Prophet. Harry jumped to his feet, the glass orb he'd been levitating crashing to the floor. When can I see him? The questioning occurs tomorrow, Griphook replied. And no, you cannot attend, it's within the Ministry of Magic, and Dumbledore would certainly attempt to interfere if you appeared. Harry's excitement dimmed slightly, but he understood the caution. How long until we know the outcome? If all goes according to plan, your godfather could be legally free within days. Griphook handed him a folded newspaper. This is today's Prophet. The king thought you should see it. Harry unfolded the wizarding newspaper, marveling briefly at the moving photographs before focusing on the headline that screamed across the front page, Boy Who Lived Missing. Goblins declare war on Dumbledore. Sirius Black never received trial. The article beneath detailed how Harry Potter had disappeared from his Muggle relative's home, triggering a Goblin investigation that uncovered shocking irregularities in the handling of the Potter estate. It further revealed that Sirius Black, named as Harry's godfather and guardian in the Potter's will, had been imprisoned without trial on Dumbledore's watch as chief warlock. Public opinion is turning, Griphook noted with satisfaction. Dumbledore's carefully constructed image is beginning to crumble. Harry read through the article, fascinated by how the wizarding world perceived these events. The paper referred to him as the boy who lived, apparently a title he'd earned for surviving Voldemort's attack. They make me sound like some kind of hero, he said with a frown. To many, you are, Steelclaw commented, repairing the broken glass orb with a wave of his hand. The wizard who defeated the Dark Lord as an infant. But I didn't do anything, Harry protested. It was my mum, wasn't it? Gornick said she cast old protection spells before Voldemort killed her. A truth Dumbledore has never publicized, Griphook agreed. Perhaps because it suited him to have the wizarding world focus on you rather than examining the circumstances more closely. Harry considered this, feeling uncomfortable with his apparent fame. Will I have to deal with this when I go to Hogwarts? People treating me like some hero? Most likely, Griphook said frankly. Which is why your education here is so vital. You must know yourself before facing a world that believes it already knows you. Harry nodded, determination settling in his chest. Then I'd better get back to practice. He resumed his stance, focusing on the repaired glass orb. This time, when he lifted it with his mind, it rose smoothly and hovered steadily in the air. Steelclaw nodded approvingly. Your control improves daily. Soon we'll try multiple objects simultaneously. Harry smiled, concentrating on keeping the orb aloft. Whatever came next, whether it was meeting his godfather or eventually attending Hogwarts, he would be ready. In the depths of Azkaban prison, Sirius Black huddled in the corner of his cell, trying to maintain the last fragments of his sanity. The Dementors had passed by recently, leaving him shivering and weak. Only his knowledge of innocence, and the burning need to someday protect Harry, kept him from surrendering to madness. He'd long since lost track of time. Years, certainly. Harry would be older now. Perhaps already at Hogwarts. A commotion in the hallway outside his cell roused him from his dark thoughts. Voices, human voices, not the rattling breath of Dementors. Cell 390. Black, Sirius Orion. The door to his cell creaked open, and Sirius blinked in the sudden light of multiple wand tips. Mr. Black, said an official-looking wizard in ministry robes, by order of the Wisengamot, you are being temporarily removed from Azkaban to attend a questioning under Veritaserum regarding the events of October 31st and November 1st, 1981. Sirius stared, unable to process what he was hearing. A questioning? After all these years? Harry, he croaked, his voice rusty from disuse. Is Harry okay? The ministry officials exchanged glances. Mr. Potter's status will be addressed during the questioning, one replied cautiously. Please come with us. As they placed magic-suppressing cuffs on his wrists, Sirius felt something he hadn't experienced in years, hope. Harry couldn't sleep. Tomorrow, according to Griphook, they would know the outcome of Sirius Black's questioning. The prophet had reported that the ministry had removed Black from Azkaban for interrogation under Veritaserum, a truth serum that supposedly made it impossible to lie. If his godfather was innocent, as the goblins believed based on the evidence they'd gathered, he might soon have a real family. Unable to lie still, Harry got up and padded to the small desk in his chamber. On it lay books about wizarding law, goblin customs, and magical theory. He'd devoured them all over the past weeks, hungry for knowledge about the world he belonged to. He picked up the most recent edition, a photo album Ragnarok had arranged to retrieve from the Potter family vault. It contained pictures of his parents, moving and smiling, waving up at him from the pages. In several, a younger, healthier Sirius Black appeared alongside them, laughing with his father or swinging a baby Harry high in the air. "Please be innocent," Harry whispered to the image of the man who might become his guardian. "Please." A knock at his door startled him. It was well past midnight. Who would be visiting at this hour? "Enter," he called, hastily closing the album. To his surprise, King Ragnarok himself stepped into the chamber. The Goblin King rarely visited Harry's personal quarters, usually summoning him to the throne room or study instead. "Your Majesty," Harry said, standing quickly. "Is something wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," Ragnarok replied, his expression unusually gentle. "Quite the opposite. I thought you might wish to hear the news immediately rather than waiting for morning." Harry's heart leapt. "About Sirius?" Ragnarok nodded. "The questioning concluded an hour ago. Under Veritaserum, Black testified that he was not your parents' secret keeper, Peter Pettigrew was. Pettigrew betrayed your parents to Voldemort, then framed Black by killing the Muggles himself before escaping in his animagus form, a rat. So he's innocent?" Harry could barely breathe. "Completely innocent. The Wisengamot has already voted to release him with full exoneration and compensation for wrongful imprisonment," Ragnarok confirmed. "However, after 7 years in Azkaban, he requires extensive healing. St. Mungo's, the wizard hospital, has him under care now." "When can I meet him?" Harry asked eagerly. "Soon. We're arranging for his transfer to Goblin healers once his initial treatment is complete. Goblin medicine can address certain effects of Dementor exposure more effectively than wizard methods." Harry sat down hard on his bed, overwhelmed. "He's free. He's actually free." "Indeed. And according to our sources, his first coherent question was about you. Your welfare was his primary concern, even after years of torment." Something warm bloomed in Harry's chest. Someone cared about him. Had always cared about him. "Thank you," he said fervently. "For investigating. For helping him. For everything." Ragnarok inclined his head. "The House of Potter has been a fair and honorable client of Gringotts for centuries. We repay loyalty with loyalty." He turned to leave, then paused. "Rest well, Harry Potter. Your life is about to change again, this time, I think, for the better." The Daily Prophet's headline the next morning screamed, "Sirius Black innocent." Peter Pettigrew named as true betrayer of Potter's Dumbledore questioned on failure to ensure trial. The wizarding public was in an uproar. Sirius Black, notorious mass murderer, was innocent, and had been left to rot in Azkaban while the real traitor roamed free. The article raised pointed questions about why Dumbledore, as chief warlock, had never pushed for a trial, especially given Black's status as Harry Potter's godfather. A separate article speculated on Harry Potter's whereabouts, noting that the boy who lived remained under Goblin protection while his godfather recovered. "They're turning on Dumbledore," Griphook observed as he reviewed the paper with Harry over breakfast. "His reputation for infallibility is cracking." "Good," Harry said firmly. "He left me with abusers and my godfather in prison. He doesn't deserve his reputation." Griphook nodded approvingly. "The king wishes to see you this morning. I believe it concerns meeting Black." Harry nearly choked on his porridge. "Today? Perhaps. Black's initial healing at St. Mungo's is complete. He's being transferred to our medical chambers later this morning. Heart racing with anticipation, Harry hurried through the rest of breakfast and his morning lessons before presenting himself at Ragnar's study. The Goblin King wasn't alone. A tall, severe-looking female goblin stood beside him, dressed in healer's robes. "Harry, this is Bone Grinder, our chief mind healer," Ragnar introduced. "She will be overseeing your godfather's recovery." Harry bowed respectfully. "It's an honor to meet you, Healer Bone Grinder." The healer assessed him with penetrating eyes. "So you are the wizard child who has turned the Goblin Nation on its head," she observed. "Interesting. You show proper respect." "Harry has been an exemplary student of Goblin customs," Ragnar noted. "He also shows remarkable magical aptitude for his age." Bone Grinder nodded. "Good. That will help with Black's recovery. Familiar magic, family magic, can accelerate healing in cases of Dementor exposure." "I can help heal him?" Harry asked eagerly. "Potentially," the healer confirmed. "But first, we must discuss what to expect. Your godfather has spent 7 years surrounded by creatures that feed on happiness and positive emotions. The damage is significant. Will he recognize me?" Harry asked, suddenly worried. "He should. From our initial assessment, Black maintained his sanity by focusing on his innocence and his concern for you. Those fixed thoughts provided some protection against the worst effects of the Dementors." Bone Grinder's expression softened slightly. "But he will be thin, weak, and possibly confused at times. Do not expect the laughing young man from your photographs." Harry nodded solemnly. "I understand. When can I see him?" "He arrives within the hour," Ragnar said. "Bone Grinder will escort you to the healing chambers once he's settled." The next hour was the longest of Harry's life. He paced his room, too anxious to focus on anything. When Bone Grinder finally came to collect him, he practically jumped to his feet. "Remember," the healer cautioned as they walked toward the medical chambers, "speak calmly. Do not make sudden movements. He may be easily startled or confused." Harry nodded, trying to prepare himself. Nothing could have fully prepared him, however, for the sight of Sirius Black lying on the crystal healing bed. His godfather was a shadow of the vibrant young man from the photographs. Emaciated, with sunken cheeks and dark hollows around his eyes, his skin was waxy and pale from years without sunlight. His black hair hung in matted tangles around his face. Yet when he saw Harry, his eyes, the only part of him that seemed alive, lit up with recognition and joy. "Harry," he rasped, raising a trembling hand. "You're safe. They told me you were safe, but I needed to see." "I'm safe," Harry confirmed, approaching slowly. "The goblins have been taking care of me." "You look so much like James," Sirius whispered. "But your eyes, my mom's," Harry finished. "I know. I've seen pictures." He reached the edge of the crystal bed, hesitating before placing his small hand in Sirius's outstretched one. The moment their hands touched, a warm golden glow enveloped them both. Harry felt his magic respond to the contact, reaching out instinctively toward his godfather. "Fascinating," murmured Bone Grinder, observing closely. "The family magic recognizes the godfather bond. This will indeed accelerate the healing." Sirius stared at the golden light with wonder. "Your magic, it's so strong, Harry. So pure." "The goblins removed the blocks Dumbledore put on it," Harry explained, still marveling at the connection he could feel between them. "And they got rid of the Horcrux in my scar." Sirius's expression darkened. "Blocks? Horcrux? Dumbledore has much to answer for." "And he will," Harry assured him. "The goblins declared war on him for what he did to both of us." A ghost of the old Sirius's grin appeared. "Good. Always liked the goblins. Straightforward. No manipulation." His eyes began to droop, the brief conversation clearly exhausting him. "You should rest," Harry said. "I'll come back later." "Promise?" Sirius asked, suddenly looking vulnerable. "Not going anywhere." "I promise," Harry said firmly, squeezing his godfather's hand. "We're going to be a family now. Just like my parents wanted." Sirius's eyes closed, but he smiled as he drifted off to sleep, his hand still holding Harry's. Bone Grinder nodded approvingly. "The connection is strong. Continue visiting daily. Your presence will help stabilize his mind and magic." Harry nodded, gently releasing Sirius's hand. "I'll do whatever it takes to help him recover." As he left the healing chamber, Harry felt lighter than he had in weeks. For the first time in his memory, he had family, a real family who wanted him. The war with Dumbledore was far from over. There would be challenges ahead as Sirius recovered and Harry prepared to eventually enter the wizarding world proper. But for now, Harry Potter had found his place, bridging the world of goblins and wizards, with a future brighter than he'd ever dared to imagine. Chapter 2, Silver and Steel, Again. Griphook barked, his blade flashing in the torchlight of the training chamber. 8-year-old Harry Potter spun away from the attack, his own shorter blade coming up to parry with a metallic clang. Sweat poured down his face, but his green eyes were focused and determined. The skinny, frightened 6-year-old who'd arrived at Gringotts was gone. In his place stood a lean, confident young wizard who moved with the balanced precision that came from 2 years of daily combat training. "Your footwork is sloppy," Griphook criticized, pressing the attack. "A dead wizard has perfect footwork because he's lying down." Harry grinned despite the pressure. He adjusted his stance and countered with a series of quick strikes that drove his goblin friend back several steps. "Better," Griphook acknowledged. "Now finish it." Seeing an opening, Harry feinted left before dropping to a crouch and sweeping Griphook's legs. The young goblin warrior hit the stone floor with a grunt, and Harry's training blade touched his throat a heartbeat later. "I yield," Griphook said, his sharp teeth showing in a proud smile. "You're improving daily." Harry offered a hand, pulling his friend to his feet. "Only because you're ruthless." "Ruthless keeps you alive," Griphook replied, the familiar refrain spoken with affection. "That's enough blade work for today. Show me your wandless progress." Harry nodded, sheathing his training sword. He turned toward the far end of the chamber where 20 metal spheres of different sizes rested on pedestals. Taking a deep breath, he centered himself, feeling the now familiar warmth of his magic responding to his call. He raised both hands, fingers splayed. The spheres began to rise simultaneously, floating in perfect formation. With practiced concentration, Harry set them spinning, first in a circle, then in more complex patterns, weaving between each other without a single collision. "Impressive control," observed King Ragnarok from the doorway. Harry maintained his focus even as he greeted the Goblin King. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I've been practicing the precision exercises Master Steelclaw suggested." Ragnarok entered the training chamber fully, watching as Harry manipulated the metal spheres into increasingly complex patterns. "Steelclaw reports you've mastered exercises meant for goblins twice your age." With a final flourish, Harry sent the spheres flying back to their pedestals, each landing with a soft clink. Only then did he turn and bow respectfully to the king. "I've had excellent teachers," Harry said sincerely. "And Sirius has been helping with the more wizard-specific magic." The mention of Sirius Black brought a rare smile to Ragnarok's face. "Your godfather's recovery continues to exceed expectations. The healers credit your daily sessions together." Harry beamed. Sirius's recovery had been the brightest spot of the past 2 years. From the skeletal figure barely clinging to sanity, his godfather had gradually regained his strength, weight, and much of his former vibrant personality. While still prone to occasional dark moods and nightmares, Sirius had become a constant, loving presence in Harry's life. "He's teaching me how to become an animagus," Harry admitted. "Says I'm showing early signs of the transformation." Griphook snorted. Of course you are. Normal wizarding children don't show such aptitude until puberty. Harry shrugged, slightly embarrassed by the praise. Despite 2 years of exceptional magical progress, he still wasn't entirely comfortable acknowledging his abilities. The Dursley's conditioning ran deep. Speaking of exceptional abilities, Ragnarok said, that's why I've come. Your magical growth and dedication to goblin ways have impressed our elders. The council has approved my request to offer you something no wizard has received in over 7 centuries. Harry straightened, instantly attentive. A blood brotherhood ritual, Ragnarok continued. With Griphook, should you both agree? Griphook gasped, clearly caught by surprise. Your Majesty, such an honor is, well-deserved, Ragnarok interrupted. You two have formed a genuine bond of friendship and respect. Formalizing it through our ancient rituals would create a precedent for future goblin-wizard relations. Harry looked at Griphook, wide-eyed. Though they'd become close friends over the past 2 years, training together daily, sharing meals, teaching each other their respective cultures, he understood enough about goblin customs to know how significant this offer was. What exactly does blood brotherhood mean? Harry asked carefully. Ragnarok nodded approvingly at the question. It means you would be recognized as Griphook's brother in magic and spirit, though not by birth. You would have certain rights within the goblin nation normally reserved only for goblins. Griphook would have similar standing regarding the House of Potter. It creates a bond that goes beyond friendship, a magical connection that would benefit you both. It would be an honor, Harry said immediately, then hesitated, looking at his friend. If Griphook wants this too. The young goblin's normally stoic expression broke into a rare full smile. I can think of no better brother, Harry Potter. Ragnarok nodded, pleased. The ritual will take place tomorrow at moonrise. Rest well tonight. The bonding requires significant magical energy from both participants. After the king departed, Harry turned to Griphook. Why didn't you ever mention this possibility? Because it hasn't happened in centuries, Griphook explained, still looking stunned. The last wizard to become blood brother to a goblin was Harlow Fleamont, an ancestor of yours, actually. Really? Harry's eyes widened. Is that why your father's been teaching me about goblin metallurgy? Because of some family connection? Griphook nodded. The Potters have always shown more respect to goblins than most wizarding families. Your ancestors' brotherhood with Ironhook the Clever led to several collaborative magical innovations. Your family sword was one result. I have a family sword. In your vault. I suspect the king will permit you to claim it after our ritual. Griphook's expression grew serious. This changes things, Harry. The wizarding world won't understand or approve. Blood brotherhood with a goblin will set you further apart. Harry shrugged. I'm already the boy who lived, and Dumbledore's runaway ward according to the prophet. What's one more title? He grinned. Besides, I'd rather be your brother than the wizarding world's hero any day. Griphook punched his arm lightly, a goblin gesture of affection. Sentimental wizard. Absolutely not. Sirius exclaimed, pacing the comfortable quarters he now shared with Harry. Blood rituals are dangerous, Harry. There's a reason they're classified as borderline dark magic by the Ministry. Only wizard blood rituals, Harry countered calmly. Goblin rituals work differently. They're based on honor and intent, not sacrifice or dominance. Sirius ran a hand through his now healthy black hair, looking frustrated. How do you know that? Because I've been studying goblin magic for 2 years, Harry replied. And because I trust Griphook and Ragnarok. They wouldn't offer this if it could harm me. Sirius sighed, dropping onto a nearby chair. Though he'd recovered remarkably well physically, emotional regulation remained challenging after years with Dementors. Harry had learned to ride out his godfather's occasional overprotective outbursts. I know you trust them. So do I, after everything they've done for us, Sirius admitted. I just worry. You're all I have, kiddo. Harry moved to sit beside his godfather. And you're all I have too. Well, you and the goblins. That's why this matters. It creates connections, family, beyond just the two of us. Sirius studied him for a long moment, his gray eyes softening. You're not like other 8-year-olds, you know that. Sometimes I forget I'm talking to a kid, not a little adult. The Dursleys didn't exactly let me be a kid, Harry pointed out. And neither did Dumbledore's manipulations. Sirius's expression darkened at the mention of both names. Fair point. He sighed again, then nodded. All right. If this is what you want, I won't stand in your way. But I'm going to be there, watching every second of the ritual. Harry grinned, leaning against his godfather's side. I wouldn't have it any other way. Besides, you'll need to understand the significance when you start negotiating with the Ministry for my custody. Sirius groaned. Don't remind me. The paperwork alone is giving me nightmares worse than the Dementors. Though meant as a joke, Harry knew the custody battle was wearing on Sirius. Despite his full exoneration and the discovery of Dumbledore's illegal actions, the wizarding legal system moved at a glacial pace. Officially, Harry remained a ward of the Ministry, though the Goblin's declaration of protection meant no one could force him to leave Gringotts without his consent. Any news from Madame Bones? Harry asked, referring to the head of magical law enforcement who had been surprisingly helpful in Sirius's case. She believes the final hearing will be scheduled next month, Sirius replied. With the evidence we have, plus the public opinion firmly against Dumbledore now, she's confident I'll be granted full guardianship. And then? And then we decide where to live, Sirius said. Though I suspect you'll want to maintain close ties with Gringotts. Harry nodded. I need to continue my goblin training alongside wizard magic. Plus, after tomorrow, Griphook will be my blood brother. I can't just leave. We'll figure it out, Sirius assured him. Maybe a property near Gringotts, or one with secure flow access. He ruffled Harry's perpetually messy hair. Enough serious talk. Show me that transfiguration sequence we were working on yesterday. Harry grinned, always eager to demonstrate his magical progress. He focused on a silver goblet sitting on the table, reaching out with his magic. The goblet shimmered, then smoothly transformed into a small silver fox that yipped once before running in circles around the table. Excellent! Sirius exclaimed. Now the multi-stage transition we discussed. Concentrating harder, Harry directed his magic again. The silver fox morphed into a miniature tree, then a fountain with actual flowing water, before returning to its original goblet form. That's my godson. Sirius crowed proudly. James would be over the moon seeing you master form chaining transfiguration at 8. Your dad didn't get that until 4th year at Hogwarts. Harry beamed at the praise. Sirius's stories about his parents were precious gifts, helping him build a mental picture of James and Lily Potter as real people rather than just names or photos. Do you think they'd be okay with me becoming Griphook's blood brother? Harry asked, the question revealing his lingering uncertainty. Sirius's expression softened. Your dad came from a family that always respected goblins more than most wizards. And your mum? She judged people, and beings, by their character, not their species. So yes, Harry, I think they'd be proud of the bridges you're building. Reassured, Harry nodded. Then I'm ready for tomorrow. The ritual chamber looked nothing like Harry expected. Instead of the solemn, stone-carved rooms where his magical blocks had been removed and the Horcrux exorcised, this space was open and airy, with a domed ceiling enchanted to show the night sky. A shallow circular pool of silver liquid, similar to but different from the Purification pool, occupied the center, surrounded by 7 tall silver pillars. Harry and Griphook stood on opposite sides of the pool, both dressed in simple white robes. Around them gathered a small audience, King Ragnarok, Sirius, Griphook's parents Sharpclaw and Silvertooth, and several goblin elders. The Blood Brotherhood ritual dates back to the founding of the Goblin Nation, Ragnarok explained, his voice formal. It creates not just a familial bond but a magical one. Each participant gains certain aspects of the other's innate abilities while maintaining their own unique nature. Harry and Griphook exchanged excited glances. "Step into the pool," instructed an ancient female goblin whom Harry recognized as Ironheart, the keeper of rituals. The silver liquid felt warm against Harry's feet as he waded into the shallow pool. Griphook did the same from the opposite side, until they met in the center. "Extend your right arms," Ironheart directed. They obeyed, holding their arms out palm up. Ironheart approached with a ceremonial dagger made of a strange, iridescent metal Harry had never seen before. "This blade was forged from goblin silver and meteor iron," she explained. "It creates wounds that heal cleanly but leave the connection open." With quick, precise movements, she cut a thin line across each of their palms. Harry felt only a slight sting, much less pain than he'd anticipated. "Join hands," Ironheart instructed. Harry clasped Griphook's hand firmly, their blood mingling. Immediately, he felt a tingling sensation where their palms connected, spreading up his arm and throughout his body. "Repeat after me," Ironheart told them. "I offer my blood freely, my magic willingly, my loyalty completely." Together, Harry and Griphook recited, "I offer my blood freely, my magic willingly, my loyalty completely." The silver liquid around their feet began to glow, rising in spiraling tendrils around their joined hands. "From two bloodlines, one bond," Ironheart continued. "From two bloodlines, one bond," they echoed. The silver tendrils glowed brighter, now enveloping their arms entirely. "From two magics, one strength. From two magics, one strength." Harry felt his magic surging, meeting and mingling with a different but equally powerful force he recognized as Griphook's goblin magic. The sensation was extraordinary, not diminishing his own powers but enhancing them, adding new dimensions he couldn't quite identify yet. "From two paths, one brotherhood," Ironheart concluded. "From two paths, one brotherhood," Harry and Griphook declared together. A flash of brilliant silver light erupted from their joined hands, so bright that Harry had to close his eyes. When he opened them again, the light had subsided, but a thin silver thread now visibly connected their wrists, pulsing with magical energy. As he watched, the thread sank beneath their skin, disappearing from view but leaving a warm, comforting sense of connection in its wake. "The Brotherhood is sealed," Ironheart announced. "No power of wizard or goblin may break it. You are now brothers in magic, blood, and purpose." Harry looked at Griphook, seeing his friend, his brother, in a new light. He could sense Griphook's presence in a way that transcended ordinary perception, a magical awareness of his location, his general emotional state, even a vague sense of his health. "That's incredible," Harry whispered. Griphook nodded, clearly experiencing the same sensation. "The bond will settle over the next few days. The awareness will become less intense but remain accessible when needed." They stepped out of the pool, the silver liquid clinging to their feet briefly before sliding away, leaving them completely dry. Ragnarok approached, holding two silver armbands engraved with matching runes. "These mark your brotherhood visibly to all goblins and magically sensitive wizards," the king explained, placing one band on Harry's right bicep and the other on Griphook's. "They cannot be removed except by mutual consent and will grow as you do." The metal felt cool against Harry's skin for a moment before warming to body temperature. The runes pulsed once with silver light, then settled into a subtle glow. "Harry Potter," Ragnarok declared formally, "you are now recognized as a friend of the Goblin Nation and blood brother to Griphook, son of Sharpclaw. You may speak for your brother in matters of commerce and honor. His enemies are your enemies, his allies your allies." The king turned to Griphook. "Griphook, son of Sharpclaw, you are now recognized as friend of the noble house of Potter and blood brother to Harry James Potter. You may speak for your brother in matters of commerce and honor. His enemies are your enemies, his allies your allies." Sirius stepped forward next, his face showing both wonder and respect for the ancient ritual. "As Regent of House Black and Guardian of Harry Potter, I acknowledge and honor this brotherhood. Sharpclaw and Silvertooth similarly acknowledged the bond from Griphook's family side. With the formalities complete, the gathering shifted to a celebratory mood. Goblin musicians appeared, playing instruments Harry had learned to appreciate during his time at Gringotts. Food and drink, a mixture of goblin and wizard fare, materialized on tables along the chamber's perimeter. "How do you feel?" Sirius asked, approaching Harry with a goblet of fruit juice. "Different," Harry replied honestly. "But good different. Like I've gained something I didn't know was missing." Sirius nodded thoughtfully. "Magic this ancient and profound changes you. Your aura looks richer somehow." He grinned suddenly. "Your father would be having kittens right now, both terrified for you and insanely jealous that you've experienced something no wizard in centuries has done." Harry laughed, the sound drawing Griphook to their conversation. "The effects will continue to manifest over the coming weeks," the young goblin explained. "You'll likely notice enhanced perception of magic, particularly goblin magic. I'm already experiencing a stronger connection to wizard magic." "Will it affect Harry's education at Hogwarts?" Sirius asked. "Only positively," Griphook assured him. "The Brotherhood doesn't replace or diminish existing magic, it adds complementary strengths." Ragnarok joined their small group. "Indeed. And speaking of complementary strengths, it's time Harry claimed his birthright." The king gestured to a goblin standing nearby, who came forward bearing a long object wrapped in shimmering cloth. "The Potter family sword," Ragnarok announced. "Forged by Ironhook the Clever and Harlow Fleamont Potter after their own blood brotherhood ritual." The cloth was pulled away, revealing a magnificent sword. Unlike the purely functional training blades Harry had used, this weapon was clearly both practical and ceremonial. The blade gleamed silver with subtle runes etched along its length. The hilt was wrapped in dark leather, with a ruby the size of Harry's thumb set in the pommel. "It's been waiting in your family vault for its rightful wielder," Ragnarok continued. "Now that you've formed the same bond that led to its creation, you may claim it." Harry hesitated, looking to Sirius for guidance. His godfather nodded. "It's yours by blood and right, Harry." Carefully, Harry reached for the sword. The moment his fingers closed around the hilt, the ruby in the pommel glowed brilliantly, and the runes along the blade flashed gold before settling into a subtle silver shimmer. "It recognizes you," Griphook said, sounding impressed. "And your brotherhood with me has activated enchantments dormant for centuries." The sword felt perfectly balanced in Harry's hand, despite being sized for an adult. As he held it, the blade actually shortened slightly, adjusting to his height and reach. "It grows with its wielder," Ragnarok explained, noting Harry's surprise. "Another innovation from your ancestors' collaboration with Ironhook." Harry performed a few experimental passes with the blade, marveling at how naturally it moved with him. "It feels alive." "In a sense, it is," Griphook confirmed. Goblin-wizard collaborative magic creates artifacts with aspects of both traditions. Your sword is partially sentient, it will respond to your needs and intentions. "This is brilliant," Harry breathed, carefully sheathing the sword in the scabbard Ragnarok handed him. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The king inclined his head. "Use it with honor, young Potter. And remember, today marks not just your brotherhood with Griphook, but a new chapter in goblin-wizard relations. There are many who will not appreciate such changes." Harry nodded solemnly, understanding the king's warning. His life already sat at the intersection of multiple conflicts, the ongoing legal battles with Dumbledore, the wizarding world's fascination with the boy who lived, and now his unprecedented bond with the Goblin Nation. But looking around at Sirius, Griphook, and the other goblins who had become his unexpected family, Harry felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Blood Brotherhood's effects became evident within days. Harry discovered he could now sense the magical properties of metals simply by touch, a distinctly goblin ability. His already impressive wandless magic gained further precision, especially for enchantment and transfiguration. Griphook, meanwhile, found himself able to cast certain wizard spells without a wand, something previously impossible for goblins. His natural goblin affinity for detecting curses and wards expanded to include purely wizard-created protections. "It's fascinating," Sirius commented one evening, watching Harry and Griphook practice their new abilities. "You're neither purely wizard nor goblin in your magic now. You're something new." Harry grinned, manipulating a blob of molten silver into complex shapes with just his thoughts, a skill that had previously required years of goblin apprenticeship. "It feels natural, though. Like the magic was always there, just waiting to be accessed." Their training and education continued with renewed intensity. Sirius, now fully recovered physically if not entirely emotionally, took a more active role in teaching Harry wizard-specific magic. By combining Sirius's knowledge with goblin techniques, Harry progressed at an astonishing rate. "You'll be the most uniquely educated student ever to attend Hogwarts," Sirius remarked after Harry successfully cast a Patronus charm, a feat most adult wizards couldn't manage. The silver stag that erupted from Harry's hands, still no wand, to Sirius's continued amazement, pranced around the room before dissolving into misty light. "If I attend Hogwarts," Harry replied, a conversation they'd had frequently. Sirius sighed. "We've been over this, kiddo. Yes, Dumbledore is still headmaster, but his power has been severely curtailed. The Board of Governors has him on probation, and the ICW removed him as Supreme Mugwump after our evidence came to light." "I know," Harry acknowledged. "But Hogwarts is still his domain. He'll try to control me." "And fail," Sirius countered confidently. "Between your goblin training, our legal preparations, and your own abilities, you're better equipped to handle his manipulations than anyone." Harry nodded reluctantly. Despite his reservations, he knew Hogwarts offered educational opportunities and social connections he'd need. Isolating himself entirely from wizarding society wouldn't serve his long-term goals. "Besides," Sirius added with a mischievous grin, "think of all the chaos you and Griphook could cause through your bond. No Hogwarts headmaster has ever dealt with a student magically connected to a goblin warrior." That made Harry laugh. "True. And Griphook is already planning to use our bond to bypass certain Hogwarts wards when he visits. That's my godson. A marauder in the making after all." Their good mood was interrupted by Sharptooth, Griphook's father and Gringotts' head of security, entering with a grave expression. "Lord Black, Mr. Potter," he addressed them formally, indicating serious business. "The king requests your immediate presence in his study. Ministry officials have arrived demanding an audience." Sirius and Harry exchanged concerned glances. "Which officials?" Sirius asked, already moving to make himself more presentable. "Cornelius Fudge himself, accompanied by Dolores Umbridge and 2 Aurors," Sharptooth replied, his distaste evident. "They claim to have a court order regarding Harry's custody." Harry's stomach tightened, but he kept his expression calm. "Dumbledore's work, I assume." "Likely," Sharptooth agreed. "Though the minister is supposedly acting independently, our intelligence suggests he recently had a private meeting with the headmaster." Harry nodded, straightening his robes. In the 2 years since his arrival at Gringotts, he'd learned to present himself as befitted the heir of an ancient and noble house. Gone were the oversized hand-me-downs and broken glasses. He now dressed in quality wizarding attire tailored to his still small but healthy frame, and goblin healers had permanently corrected his vision. "Let's not keep the minister waiting," Harry said with more confidence than he felt. "Sirius, should we bring the legal documentation?" "Already preparing it," Griphook answered, entering with a leather folio. The Blood Brotherhood allowed him to sense when Harry might need support. "Everything from the Wisengamot rulings to the international recognition of your status under goblin protection." Sirius squeezed Harry's shoulder reassuringly. "Remember, they can bluster all they want, but legally they're standing on quicksand. Fudge is a politician first, he'll back down if faced with enough evidence and pressure." Harry nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's go, then." Minister for Magic Cornelius Fudge was not having a good day. What should have been a simple matter of asserting ministry authority over a child, albeit a famous one, had turned into a diplomatic nightmare the moment he'd entered Gringotts. Instead of the expected deference, he'd been kept waiting for 15 minutes before being escorted not to a meeting room but to the Goblin King's personal study. The message was clear: he was being granted an audience, not conducting official ministry business. "This is outrageous," hissed Dolores Umbridge, his senior undersecretary, as they waited. "These creatures have no right to dictate terms to the Minister for Magic." "Careful, Dolores," Fudge murmured nervously. "We're in their territory now." The two Aurors accompanying them, Dawlish and Shacklebolt, remained professionally silent, though Shacklebolt's expression suggested he found the situation more interesting than offensive. The massive doors swung open, and King Ragnarok entered. Despite being shorter than the wizards, his presence dominated the room immediately. He wore formal battle regalia rather than diplomatic robes, another pointed message. "Minister Fudge," Ragnarok said without preamble. "You requested an audience regarding Harry Potter?" Fudge straightened, attempting to reclaim some authority. "Yes, indeed. We have a matter of some urgency." He fell silent as Sirius Black entered the room, followed by a boy Fudge almost didn't recognize as Harry Potter. The last public images of the boy who lived were from before his disappearance 2 years ago, a small, undernourished child with broken glasses and a lightning scar. The boy before him now stood straight and confident, dressed in high-quality robes with subtle Potter family emblems. His famous scar was still visible but far less pronounced, and his green eyes held a maturity and awareness Fudge found unsettling in an 8-year-old. Most surprising was the silver armband clearly visible on the boy's right bicep, a Goblin Blood Brotherhood band, if Fudge's limited knowledge was correct. Beside Potter stood a young goblin wearing an identical band, his posture protective. "Minister Fudge," Sirius Black greeted coolly. "To what do we owe this unexpected visit?" Fudge fumbled momentarily before regaining his composure. "Mr. Black, good to see you recovered. We've come regarding young Harry's custody situation. The ministry has concerns about, my godson is under my guardianship as per the Wisingamot ruling of June 15, Black interrupted smoothly. "All paperwork has been filed correctly." "Yes, well," Fudge continued, "new information has come to light suggesting the environment might not be appropriate for the boy who lived." Harry stepped forward, and despite his youth, something in his manner made Fudge pause. "Minister," Harry said politely but firmly, "I believe you're referring to my blood brotherhood with Griphook, son of Sharpclaw. If so, I should inform you that such ancient magical bonds fall outside ministry jurisdiction under International Confederation of Wizards Treaty 1752, Section 4, regarding interspecies magical alliances predating modern wizarding governance." Fudge blinked, completely thrown by the child's articulate response. Umbridge, however, was less easily deterred. "Now see here," she said in her girlishly sweet voice that didn't match her harsh expression. "A wizard child living among goblins, participating in dark blood rituals, it's simply unacceptable. The ministry has a duty to ensure proper wizarding upbringing for magical children." "Dark blood rituals?" Harry repeated, raising an eyebrow in a manner eerily reminiscent of Lily Evans at her most formidable. "Perhaps you should consult with your Department of Mysteries, Madam Umbridge. They maintain records confirming Goblin Blood Brotherhood ceremonies are categorized as neutral ancient magic under Ministry Classification System 17B. Griphook stepped forward, handing Harry a parchment which he offered to Fudge. The official classification, signed by 3 consecutive heads of the Department of Mysteries, including the current one. Fudge took the document automatically, scanning it with growing discomfort. The boy was right, the ritual was indeed legally classified as neutral rather than dark magic. Nevertheless, Umbridge persisted, the boy who lived must be raised in a proper wizarding household. Public opinion currently favors Lord Black's guardianship by 78%, interrupted Griphook, producing another document. The Daily Prophet's own polling data from last month. Harry smiled politely. "Minister, I understand your concern for my welfare. However, I would point out that the ministry showed remarkably little concern during the 6 years I spent abused by my Muggle relatives, a placement made illegally by Albus Dumbledore in direct violation of my parents' will. The pointed reference to the ministry's previous failures regarding his welfare made Fudge wince. Furthermore, Sirius added, I should remind you that as the legal guardian of the heir to 2 ancient and noble houses, Potter and Black, any attempt to interfere with Harry's custody without due process would constitute a violation of the Ancient Houses Protection Act of 1673. An act that carries significant penalties, Ragnarok noted casually, including potential forfeiture of personal assets by the officials involved. Fudge paled visibly. The Ancient Houses Protection Act was rarely invoked but carried devastating financial and political consequences when it was. He'd been assured by Dumbledore that this would be a simple matter of asserting ministry authority. Instead, he found himself facing a legally prepared 8-year-old, his equally well-prepared godfather, and the Goblin King himself. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding, Fudge backpedaled hastily. The ministry merely wished to ensure young Harry's welfare given the unusual circumstances. My welfare is excellently provided for, Harry replied. I receive education in both goblin and wizard magic, proper nutrition and healthcare, unlike at the Dursleys, and the protection of both my godfather and the Goblin Nation. He tilted his head slightly. Would you care to see my medical records comparing my physical condition under Dumbledore's illegal placement versus now? That won't be necessary, Fudge said quickly, recognizing a political trap when he saw one. If Lord Black's guardianship has indeed been legally established, it has, Sirius confirmed. Though Harry also remains under Goblin protection due to the treaty violations committed against his family vaults. A status that supersedes even ministry authority under the Treaty of 1612. Auror Shacklebolt, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward slightly. Minister, if I may suggest, given the legal standing presented, perhaps this matter would be better addressed through formal diplomatic channels rather than direct intervention. Fudge seized the graceful exit offered by the Auror. Yes, quite right, Shacklebolt. We'll review the documentation and proceed through proper channels if any concerns remain. Ragnarok smiled, showing just enough fong to be intimidating. A wise decision, Minister. The Goblin Nation appreciates your respect for our sovereignty and treaties. Of course, Fudge muttered, backing toward the door. We'll just be on our way then. Good day to you all. Harry and Sirius maintained their composed expressions until the ministry officials had departed. The moment the doors closed, Sirius let out a laugh. Merlin's beard, Harry. You were magnificent. Did you see Fudge's face when you cited the ICW treaty? Harry grinned, the formal demeanor falling away to reveal the excited 8-year-old beneath. It worked just like we practiced. And Griphook's timing with the documents was perfect. Griphook looked smug. The Brotherhood allows me to sense when you need specific evidence. Quite useful. Ragnarok regarded them with approval. Well handled, all of you. However, this will not be their last attempt. Dumbledore is growing desperate as Harry's time to enter Hogwarts approaches. Let him try, Sirius said, his expression hardening. Every move he makes just gives us more ammunition against him. Harry nodded, though a thoughtful expression crossed his face. I've been thinking about something, actually. Dumbledore keeps trying to control me, but what about other children? Were there others he manipulated? A heavy silence fell over the room. An excellent question, Ragnarok said finally. One we perhaps should have considered sooner. The Longbottom heir, Griphook suggested. His parents were named in the Potter's will as alternative guardians. They were attacked shortly after your parents. Sirius's expression darkened. Frank and Alice. Merlin, I haven't even had a chance to visit them at St. Mungo's yet. Their son Neville would be Harry's age, Ragnarok noted. And potentially subject to similar manipulations if Dumbledore was working to control multiple children from prophecy-linked families. Harry straightened, determination flashing in his eyes. Then we need to check on him. If Dumbledore did to Neville anything like what he did to me, I'll contact Augusta Longbottom, Sirius decided. Frank's mother. She's raising Neville now, and she's never been one to blindly follow Dumbledore. Perhaps, Harry suggested, we should invite them to Gringotts. If Dumbledore has interfered with Neville's magic or inheritance. Ragnock nodded approvingly. The same tests we performed for you could reveal any tampering. I'll have our inheritance department prepare. Harry felt a new sense of purpose. His own situation, while still complicated, was greatly improved from 2 years ago. But if other children had suffered under Dumbledore's manipulations, we'll help Neville, Griphook said quietly, sensing Harry's thoughts through their bond. And anyone else Dumbledore has harmed. Augusta Longbottom was a formidable witch by any standard. Tall, stern, and impeccably dressed in formal robes and her trademark vulture-topped hat, she entered Gringotts with the confidence of one who had been managing family finances for decades. Beside her walked 8-year-old Neville Longbottom, a sharp contrast to his grandmother. Where Augusta projected strength and authority, Neville seemed to shrink into himself, his round face pinched with anxiety, his movements hesitant. Harry, waiting with Sirius and Griphook in a private meeting room, immediately noticed the difference between them and felt a pang of recognition. He'd carried himself the same way during his time with the Dursleys, trying to be invisible, to avoid drawing attention. Lady Longbottom, Sirius greeted formally, bowing slightly. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Augusta inclined her head. Lord Black. When one receives a formal request from the head of an ancient and noble house regarding a matter of mutual concern and potential family importance, one pays attention. Her gaze shifted to Harry, sharpening with interest. And this must be young Harry Potter. You have your father's look about you, but those are Lily's eyes. Harry stepped forward, offering the formal bow he'd been taught. It's an honor to meet you, Lady Longbottom. My godfather has told me how highly my parents spoke of your family. Augusta's stern expression softened fractionally. Well-mannered, I see. A pleasant surprise in these days. She placed a hand on her grandson's shoulder. This is my grandson, Neville. Neville gave an awkward half-bow. Hello, he managed. Harry smiled warmly, deliberately making his posture more relaxed. It's brilliant to meet you, Neville. We're the same age, I turn 9 in July. I'm July too, Neville replied, surprise momentarily overcoming his shyness. The 30th. I'm the 31st, Harry said, grinning. We're just a day apart. Something in Neville's expression shifted, a flicker of curiosity replacing anxiety. Harry caught it and pressed forward. Griphook and I were going to explore the Gringotts dragons after our meeting. Would you like to come along? They're brilliant, scary, but brilliant. D-dragons? Neville's eyes widened, a mix of terror and fascination. Only from a safe viewing platform, Griphook assured him. I'm Griphook, by the way. Harry's blood brother. Neville's gaze shifted to the matching silver armbands Harry and Griphook wore, his eyes widening further. Augusta cleared her throat. Perhaps we should discuss the purpose of this meeting before arranging social activities. Sirius nodded, gesturing toward the comfortable chairs arranged around a low table. Of course. Please, be seated. Once they were settled, Sirius's expression grew serious. Lady Longbottom, what we're about to discuss is sensitive and potentially upsetting. It concerns actions taken by Albus Dumbledore that may have affected not only Harry but possibly Neville as well. Augusta's eyes narrowed. I'm aware of the Prophet's reports regarding Dumbledore's mishandling of the Potter estate and Harry's illegal placement. Are you suggesting similar interference with House Longbottom? We don't know, Harry interjected honestly. But there are patterns that concern us. With Augusta's permission, Harry and Sirius explained what they had discovered about Dumbledore's actions, the illegal sealing of the Potter's will, the magical blocks placed on Harry, the embezzlement from his vaults, and the connection to the prophecy that had linked the Potter and Longbottom families. As they spoke, Augusta's expression grew increasingly thunderous. Neville, meanwhile, listened with growing confusion and alarm. If Dumbledore was willing to go to such lengths to control Harry, Sirius concluded, we believe it's possible he may have taken similar actions regarding Neville. Given that both boys were potential subjects of the same prophecy. Augusta was silent for a long moment, her gaze distant as she processed this information. Finally, she turned to her grandson. Neville, have you ever performed accidental magic? Neville flushed with embarrassment and shook his head. No, Gran. Not really. Uncle Algy says I might be a squib. Harry frowned. Who's Uncle Algy? My great-uncle, Neville mumbled. He's always testing me to see if I have magic. Dropped me off Blackpool Pier once to see if I'd swim. I nearly drowned. Harry exchanged alarmed glances with Sirius and Griphook. Lady Longbottom, Griphook said carefully, the absence of accidental magic in a child from a powerful magical lineage like the Longbottoms often indicates external suppression rather than lack of magical ability. Are you suggesting Neville's magic has been blocked? Augusta asked sharply. It's a possibility worth investigating, Sirius replied diplomatically. The goblins can perform a heritage and magical assessment similar to what was done for Harry. Augusta studied her grandson thoughtfully. I've never questioned Albus's assurances that Neville was simply a late bloomer. But considering what you've revealed about his actions regarding Harry. She squared her shoulders. What does this assessment entail? Griphook explained the blood test procedure while Harry moved to sit beside Neville. It doesn't hurt, Harry assured him quietly. Just a tiny prick, and it heals instantly. And if there are blocks on your magic like there were on mine, the goblins can remove them. Neville looked both terrified and hopeful. Do you really think I might not be a squib? I'd bet my Gringotts vault on it, Harry said firmly. The Longbottoms are a powerful magical family, just like the Potters. And if Dumbledore did mess with your magic, we'll fix it. After further discussion, Augusta agreed to the assessment. A goblin inheritance specialist was summoned, bringing the same golden dagger, crystal bowl, and enchanted parchment Harry remembered from his own test. Neville approached the ritual table nervously, but with Harry's encouragement, he managed to provide the 3 drops of blood required. As before, the blood mixed with the potion in the crystal bowl before being poured over the parchment. The results appeared more slowly than they had for Harry, but eventually red lines spread across the parchment, forming words and diagrams. The inheritance specialist studied them, his expression growing grim. Multiple blocks detected, he announced. Core suppression at approximately 75%. Memory charms. Confidence and ability dampening spells. He looked up, meeting Augusta's gaze directly. All bearing the magical signature of Albus Dumbledore. Augusta Longbottom went very still, her face paling beneath her stern exterior. Are you certain? Magical signatures are as distinctive as fingerprints, the specialist confirmed. There can be no mistake. Neville looked between the adults, confused and frightened. What does that mean? What's wrong with me? Harry placed a reassuring hand on Neville's shoulder. Nothing's wrong with you. Someone put spells on you to make your magic harder to use and to make you think you couldn't do things you actually can. He squeezed gently. The same thing happened to me. Augusta rose to her feet, her expression thunderous. I want these blocks removed immediately. And I want every piece of evidence documented for presentation to the Wisengamot. Sirius nodded grimly. We suspected Dumbledore might have targeted other children, but the extent of the interference with Neville is unforgivable, Augusta finished, a dangerous edge to her voice. To deliberately cripple a child's magic, it's tantamount to mutilation. While the adults discussed the legal implications, Harry focused on Neville, who looked overwhelmed by the revelations. It'll be okay, Harry assured him. The block removal isn't pleasant, but afterward, you'll feel amazing. Like suddenly having room to breathe when you didn't even realize you were suffocating. Were you scared? Neville asked quietly. Terrified, Harry admitted. But also excited. And I'll be right there with you if you want. Neville nodded gratefully. Please. The preparations for Neville's magical unbinding took several hours. Unlike with Harry, there was no Horcrux to remove, but the blocks were extensive and cunningly placed. Augusta used the time to contact her family's solicitor, instructing him to begin gathering evidence for a formal case against Dumbledore. When everything was finally ready, Harry accompanied Neville and Augusta to the same ritual chamber where his own blocks had been removed 2 years earlier. Ragnarok himself oversaw the proceedings, a mark of how seriously the Goblin nation was taking these revelations. The ritual will release your magic in stages, the king explained to Neville. It may feel overwhelming at first. Do not fight it, let the magic flow naturally. Neville nodded nervously, stepping onto the circular platform inscribed with golden runes. Harry stood just outside the circle with Augusta and Sirius, offering an encouraging smile. 7 Goblin ritual masters took their positions, and the chanting began. Golden light rose from the inscribed runes, swirling around Neville just as it had with Harry. The first block breaks, announced one of the ritual masters. Neville gasped, his eyes widening as the first surge of freed magic rushed through him. Plants in decorative pots around the chamber suddenly grew several inches, reaching toward him as if drawn to his power. Earth affinity, Ragnarok noted with interest. Quite strong. One by one, the blocks shattered. With each release, the plants in the chamber grew more vigorously. Vines extended, flowers bloomed out of season, and seeds in the soil spontaneously sprouted. By the 5th block, Neville was floating several inches above the platform, surrounded by a green-gold aura. Final block, intoned the lead ritual master. Core suppression. The release was explosive. Neville cried out, not in pain but in what sounded like relief, as raw magic erupted from him in a shockwave that made everyone step back. The plants throughout the chamber instantly doubled in size, some breaking their containers as they grew. When the magical storm finally calmed, Neville stood in the center of the platform, looking stunned but radiant. The timid, uncertain boy had been replaced by one who stood straighter, his face flushed with health and newfound confidence. I can feel it, he whispered in wonder. The magic. It's everywhere. Augusta Longbottom, formidable witch that she was, had tears in her eyes. Frank had the same earth affinity, she said softly. Neville truly is his father's son. Neville stepped off the platform, immediately embracing his grandmother, something Harry suspected he'd rarely done before. Then, to Harry's surprise, Neville turned and hugged him too. Thank you, Neville said fervently. You didn't even know me, but you helped anyway. Harry returned the hug, feeling a connection with this boy who had experienced similar manipulation. That's what friends do, he said simply. Augusta, composing herself, turned to Sirius and Ragnarok. House Longbottom stands with House Potter and the Goblin Nation against Albus Dumbledore. His crimes against our children will not go unanswered. Sirius nodded gravely. Together, we're stronger. And I suspect we may find more affected families as we continue investigating. The Bones girl, perhaps, Augusta suggested. Susan's parents were also opposed to Dumbledore during the war, and they died under suspicious circumstances. Harry and Neville exchanged glances, both thinking the same thing. How many other children had Dumbledore manipulated for his greater good? We'll find them all, Harry promised quietly. And we'll help them, just like we helped each other. Neville nodded, a new determination in his expression. All of them. In the months that followed, Augusta Longbottom became one of Sirius and Harry's strongest allies in wizarding politics. With her backing, the investigation into Dumbledore's activities gained legitimacy that even his most devoted supporters couldn't easily dismiss. The friendship between Harry and Neville flourished as well. Despite their different living situations, Harry splitting time between Gringotts and Sirius's newly acquired townhouse in London, Neville at Longbottom Manor, they met several times a week for joint lessons and training. Neville's transformation after the removal of his magical blocks was remarkable. His confidence grew daily, and his natural affinity for earth magic, particularly herbology and plant-based potions, quickly became apparent. Under joint tutelage from Sirius, Augusta, and various Goblin instructors, both boys developed their magical abilities far beyond typical 8-year-old levels. "Dumbledore won't know what hit him when you two reach Hogwarts," Sirius remarked one afternoon, watching Harry and Neville practice coordinated spellcasting. "A Potter-Longbottom alliance hasn't existed since your grandfather's time, and they were a formidable pair at the Wizengamot." Harry grinned at Neville. "We'll be better." Neville returned the smile, no trace of his former timidity visible. "Definitely." Their investigation expanded to include other families potentially affected by Dumbledore's manipulations. With Augusta's political connections and the Goblin's financial records, they identified several suspicious patterns involving orphan children from prominent families. Susan Bones, as Augusta had suspected, showed signs of magical tampering when her Aunt Amelia, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, agreed to have her tested. Luna Lovegood, whose mother had died in a mysterious magical accident, had memory charms detected during an examination. Even Draco Malfoy, after Sirius reluctantly reached out to his cousin Narcissa, was found to have minor blocks affecting his emotional regulation. "It's a pattern," Ragnarok observed during a strategy meeting in late autumn. Children from influential families, particularly those who lost parents during the war. Dumbledore has been quietly ensuring none grow too powerful or independent before reaching Hogwarts where he can directly influence them. "Creating a generation he can mold to his vision," Sirius added grimly. "With Harry intended as the centerpiece, the sacrificial lamb if necessary, based on his handling of that Horcrux." Harry, now approaching his 9th birthday, listened to these discussions with a maturity beyond his years. The anger he'd initially felt toward Dumbledore had transformed into something more focused, determination to prevent the headmaster from manipulating other children as he'd been manipulated. "We need to go public with everything we've found," Harry suggested. "Not just my case or Neville's, but the whole pattern. Before we all start going to Hogwarts." "It would cause a political earthquake," Augusta warned, though she didn't disagree. "Dumbledore still has many supporters who believe in his image as the kindly, all-wise leader of the light." "Then we need irrefutable evidence," Sirius said. "Something even his supporters can't dismiss or explain away." Harry exchanged glances with Griphook, their blood brotherhood allowing silent communication of ideas. "What about his own memories?" Harry suggested. "Pensive evidence. Difficult to obtain without his cooperation," Ragnarok pointed out. "And potentially altered if he provided them willingly." "What about the Hogwarts Book of Admissions?" Neville suggested unexpectedly. "Gran says it records every magical child in Britain at birth and monitors their magic levels. If there were sudden drops in recorded power after Dumbledore visited children." The adults stared at Neville with surprised appreciation. "Brilliant, Neville," Sirius said admiringly. "The book is a founder's artifact, it can't be tampered with, even by the headmaster." "But accessing it would be nearly impossible," Augusta countered. "It's kept in the headmaster's office." Harry grinned suddenly. "Unless you have Goblin allies who can bypass Hogwarts wards through a blood brotherhood bond." All eyes turned to Griphook, who returned Harry's grin with a predatory smile of his own. "Theoretically possible. The Brotherhood would allow me to bring Harry through wards not specifically designed to exclude blood-bonded pairs, which Hogwarts wards aren't, as no such bond has existed for centuries." "It would be dangerous," Ragnarok cautioned. "Discovery would have serious consequences." "Not as serious as the consequences Dumbledore should face for what he's done," Harry replied firmly. "And we wouldn't need to do it immediately. We have time to plan carefully." As the discussion continued, Harry felt a deepening sense of purpose. 2 years ago, he'd been a powerless, abused child locked in a cupboard. Now he stood at the center of a growing alliance dedicated to exposing one of the wizarding world's most powerful figures. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Sirius, Griphook, Neville, and their other allies beside him, Harry felt ready to face whatever challenges came next. Dumbledore had spent years weaving his web of control and manipulation. Harry and his friends were now systematically unraveling it, thread by thread. And when they finally confronted the headmaster directly, it would be on their terms, not his. Harry's 9th birthday celebration was unlike anything he could have imagined during his years with the Dursleys. Sirius had arranged for a combined party with Neville, whose birthday was just a day earlier, at a magically expanded section of Gringotts specially decorated for the occasion. The guest list reflected their unique position bridging multiple worlds, goblin families, including Griphook's parents and siblings, wizard allies like Augusta Longbottom, Amelia Bones and her niece Susan, Xenophilius Lovegood and his daughter Luna, and even a few progressive pureblood families like the Greengrasses, whose daughters Daphne and Astoria were close to Harry and Neville's age. This would give the old pureblood supremacists heart attacks, Sirius murmured to Harry, watching goblin and wizard children playing magical games together. Goblins, half-bloods, purebloods, all celebrating together. Your parents would be so proud. Harry beamed, watching Neville demonstrating a plant-growing charm to an enthralled Luna Lovegood. It's brilliant, isn't it? Everyone getting along despite being different. That's your mother in you, Sirius said fondly. Lily always saw the person beyond the labels. It's what made her special, and it's what makes you special too, pup. The celebration culminated with an impressive display of goblin-crafted magical fireworks inside the chamber, drawing gasps of appreciation from wizard and goblin guests alike. As the colorful explosions painted the ceiling, Harry found himself standing between Neville and Griphook, his blood brother's presence a steady comfort through their bond. Best birthday ever, Harry declared. Neville nodded agreement. Never thought I'd celebrate my birthday with goblin fireworks and actual friends. Speaking of friends, Griphook said, nudging Harry. King Ragnarok approaches. The Goblin King, resplendent in formal attire rather than battle armor, approached with an ornate wooden box in his hands. Harry Potter, Ragnarok addressed him formally. The Goblin Nation offers this gift on your 9th year, in recognition of your unique position as a blood brother to one of our own and a bridge between our worlds. Harry accepted the box with a formal bow. I am honored, Your Majesty. Opening it carefully, Harry gasped at what lay inside, a goblin-crafted wand unlike any wizard wand he'd seen in books. It was slightly shorter and thicker than standard wands, made of a dark wood with veins of silver running through it. The handle was inlaid with small emeralds that matched his eyes. A goblin-wizard collaboration, Ragnarok explained. The core contains freely given phoenix feather, basilisk fang powder, and silver from the Potter mines, bound with your own freely given blood. The wood is ancient oak from Longbottom lands, freely offered by your friend's family. Harry lifted the wand reverently. The moment his fingers closed around it, a surge of power rushed through him, different from his wandless magic but complementary to it. Silver and green sparks erupted from the tip, swirling around him before forming momentarily into the shape of a stag. It's incredible, Harry breathed, feeling the wand's magic resonating with his own. I thought I'd have to wait until I was 11 for a wand. Wizard wands are restricted by their ministry, Ragnarok said with a slight smile. This is not a wizard wand. It is a goblin-crafted focus tool designed specifically for your unique magical signature as a blood brother. Their laws do not apply. Sirius laughed out loud. Merlin's beard, that's brilliant. A legal loophole even the ministry can't challenge. Harry carefully tested the wand, attempting a simple Lumos spell. Instead of the moderate light he expected, a brilliant glow erupted that lit the entire chamber. Hastily, he ended the spell. Powerful, Neville commented, eyes wide. And completely attuned to you. Not like regular wands that just choose a compatible wizard. Harry nodded, feeling the difference. Where his wandless magic required intense concentration and clear visualization, the wand seemed to amplify his intentions effortlessly, requiring only minimal guidance. This will accelerate your training significantly, Sirius noted, examining the wand with professional interest. And give you a significant advantage at Hogwarts when the time comes. The balance between wandless and wand magic is important, Griphook reminded Harry. Continue practicing both. Many wizards become dependent on their wands, forgetting their innate capabilities. Harry nodded, understanding the wisdom in his blood brother's words. I will. This is just another tool, not a replacement for what I've already learned. As the party continued, Harry found himself the center of attention as friends took turns admiring his unique gift. Yet amid the excitement, a sobering thought occurred to him: with each new skill he mastered and each alliance he formed, the eventual confrontation with Dumbledore grew closer. The headmaster remained at Hogwarts, his public image somewhat tarnished but his position largely intact. He'd made no direct moves against Harry since the failed ministry intervention, but intelligence from their allies suggested he was simply biding his time, waiting for Harry to enter Hogwarts where his influence was strongest. Looking around at his friends, Neville showing Susan a plant growth charm, Luna chatting animatedly with Griphook about creatures only she could see, Sirius and Augusta discussing politics, Harry felt both grateful for their support and determined to protect them all from Dumbledore's manipulations. Happy thoughts, pup, Sirius said quietly, noticing Harry's momentary seriousness. Today is for celebration. The challenges will still be there tomorrow. Harry smiled, pushing his concerns aside. His godfather was right, today was about joy and friendship, not strategy and confrontation. Whatever Dumbledore might be planning, Harry was no longer the helpless, ignorant child the headmaster had intended him to be. And when they finally faced each other directly, Dumbledore would discover exactly how much had changed in the years since a desperate 6-year-old had magically transported himself to Gringotts and changed the course of wizarding history. Chapter 3, The Sword and the Wand, Duck. Harry dropped instantly, the silver blade whistling over his head close enough to stir his perpetually messy hair. Without missing a beat, he rolled right, came up in a fighting stance, and sent a wandless burst of magic at his opponent. Griphook deflected the magic with his shield, but the momentary distraction gave Harry the opening he needed. With practiced precision, he swept the goblin's legs and pressed the tip of his sword, the Potter family blade, against Griphook's chest. Yield, Harry said, grinning down at his blood brother. I yield, Griphook acknowledged, taking Harry's offered hand. Your speed has improved considerably. Not bad for nearly 11, Sharpclaw commented from the side of the training chamber. Griphook's father had been overseeing their combat training for years now, and his praise was rare enough to make Harry stand a little straighter. He fights like a goblin, Ragnarok observed, stepping into the chamber with Sirius. Yet uses magic like no goblin or wizard I've seen. A unique combination. Harry sheathed his sword and bowed respectfully to the Goblin King. High praise, Your Majesty. Thank you. Don't let it go to your head, Sirius joked, ruffling Harry's hair. You've still got plenty to learn before Hogwarts. The mention of Hogwarts sent a ripple of tension through the room. Harry's 11th birthday was just weeks away, which meant his Hogwarts letter would arrive soon. After nearly 5 years of preparation, the confrontation they'd all been anticipating was drawing near. Speaking of which, Ragnarok said, that's why I've come. It's time to finalize our strategy for your entry into Hogwarts. Harry nodded, suddenly serious. Dumbledore's been quiet lately. Too quiet, Sirius agreed. Our sources say he's been meeting privately with key members of the Wizengamot. Making promises, calling in favors. Preparing for Harry's arrival, Griphook concluded, cleaning his blade methodically as they spoke. Harry moved to a nearby bench, taking a drink of water from a goblet. He knows I'll be coming with knowledge he never intended me to have. The question is, what's his plan to regain control? That's what we need to discuss, Ragnarok said. Join me in my study when you've cleaned up. Lord Black and I have developments to share. After a quick shower and change into more formal attire, Harry made his way to Ragnarok's study. Though he now spent most of his time at Sirius's home in London, Gringotts remained his second home, a sanctuary where goblin and wizard allies could meet securely. The king's study had become their war room over the years. Maps of Hogwarts covered one wall, with annotations marking ward points, secret passages, and potential weak spots. Another wall displayed a complex chart tracking Dumbledore's known allies, their relationships, and vulnerabilities. A large round table dominated the center of the room, currently surrounded by familiar faces. Sirius and Ragnarok were there, of course. So was Augusta Longbottom, looking regal as always in formal robes. Amelia Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, sat beside her, reviewing documents with a critical eye. Algernon Croker, an unspeakable from the Department of Mysteries who had joined their cause after discovering Dumbledore's manipulation of prophecy records, was engaged in quiet conversation with Bogrod, the Goblin Chief of Security. "Sorry I'm late," Harry said, taking his seat between Sirius and an empty chair reserved for Griphook. "Training ran long." "Perfectly timed, actually," Sirius said. "Neville and Augusta just arrived." The doors opened, admitting Neville Longbottom and his grandmother. Harry grinned at the sight of his friend. Like Harry, Neville had changed dramatically over the past 3 years. No longer the timid, round-faced boy, he now carried himself with quiet confidence. While not as combat-focused as Harry, Neville had developed his own strengths, particularly in earth magic and tactical thinking. "What did I miss?" Neville asked, dropping into the chair beside Harry with casual grace. "Nothing yet. Just about to start," Harry replied. He nodded respectfully to Augusta. "Lady Longbottom." "Harry," she acknowledged with a small smile. The formidable which had become one of his strongest allies and a somewhat intimidating mentor in wizarding politics. Once everyone was settled, Ragnarok activated privacy wards around the room and nodded to Sirius to begin. "We're approaching the endgame of our 5-year shadow war with Dumbledore," Sirius said without preamble. "His position has been weakened significantly, he's lost his ICW position, his influence in the Wizengamot is diminished, and public opinion has shifted against him. But he still holds Hogwarts, and with it, considerable power. And he still wants Harry," Amelia Bones added. "My sources confirm he's been especially interested in the Philosopher's Stone recently. Nicholas Flamel has agreed to move it to Hogwarts this coming year for safekeeping." Harry exchanged glances with Neville. "That can't be coincidence." "It's not," Croker confirmed, his perpetually hooded face making his expression difficult to read. "Dumbledore knows about the Horcrux that was in your scar, Harry. He almost certainly suspects others exist. The stone would be invaluable in crafting a trap for Voldemort's wraith. With me as bait," Harry concluded flatly. "Precisely," Ragnarok said. "Which brings us to our strategy. We have 3 primary objectives: ensuring Harry's safety at Hogwarts, preventing Dumbledore from reasserting control over him, and finally bringing the headmaster to justice for his crimes." Bogrod unrolled a large parchment on the table. "We've identified 4 key vulnerabilities in Dumbledore's position. First, his reputation, already damaged but still recoverable. Second, his legal standing regarding Harry, precarious but not yet definitively resolved. Third, his control of Hogwarts, strong but not absolute due to the Board of Governors. And fourth, his political alliances, weakened but still numerous. We need to attack all 4 simultaneously," Augusta said, tapping the parchment with one finger. "A coordinated strike that leaves him no room to maneuver." Sirius nodded. "That's why we've developed what we're calling Operation Phoenix Fall." He grinned at Harry. "Your godfather isn't just a handsome face, you know. I can plan too." Harry rolled his eyes but couldn't help smiling. Sirius's humor had been a constant bright spot throughout the years of preparation and legal battles. "The plan has 3 phases," Amelia explained, taking over. "Phase 1 begins with Harry's public appearance in Diagon Alley for school shopping. This will be his first major public appearance in the wizarding world, and we'll use it to establish his image on our terms. With Goblin guards," Ragnarok added. "Making clear our continued alliance. Phase 2, continued Augusta, involves the final legal maneuvers. We've been building our case for years, documenting every violation, collecting testimony from affected families. We now have enough to force a formal magical inquiry. Which brings us to Phase 3, Croker said. The confrontation. We'll draw Dumbledore into a situation where he must defend his actions under magical compulsion, not veritaserum, which he could resist, but something more, fundamental. A truth stone, Ragnarok clarified. A goblin artifact that doesn't compel truth-telling but rather reveals lies through magical manifestation. Impossible to circumvent, as it responds to intent rather than words. Harry whistled softly. That's brilliant. But will he agree to such a test? He won't have a choice, Sirius said with satisfaction. The final custody hearing for you is scheduled 3 days before you leave for Hogwarts. Given the evidence we've amassed, the Wisengamot will require testing of both parties, me and Dumbledore, to determine fitness for guardianship. The hearing will take place here, at Gringotts, Amelia added. On neutral ground, as is tradition for disputed guardianship of heirs to ancient and noble houses. Harry considered the plan, impressed by its thoroughness. What about at Hogwarts itself? Once I'm there. Neville leaned forward. We've been working on that too. Between us, we have allies in all 4 houses now. Susan in Hufflepuff, the Greengrass sisters likely for Slytherin, Luna probably in Ravenclaw, and you and me potentially in Gryffindor. Though we shouldn't assume our sorting, Harry cautioned. With everything that's changed, we might end up anywhere. Doesn't matter, Neville replied confidently. We've built connections across house lines. And with our improved magic. Speaking of improved magic, Griphook interjected, having slipped in silently during the discussion, we need to address the wand situation. All eyes turned to Harry's goblin-made wand, which rested in a holster on his forearm. Though legal through the loophole Ragnarok had exploited, it would certainly draw attention at Hogwarts. I've been thinking about that, Harry said. I should probably get a standard wizard wand as well, for appearances, if nothing else. Ollivander would notice immediately that I'm already bonded to a wand. Not to mention, Sirius added, having 2 wands gives you a tactical advantage. Most wizards never consider the possibility of an opponent with a backup wand. All good points, Ragnarok agreed. Now, let's address the Malfoy situation. Harry groaned slightly. His complicated connection to the Malfoy family had been an unexpected development in recent years. After discovering magical tampering with their son Draco, Narcissa Malfoy had cautiously aligned with Sirius, her cousin, in opposition to Dumbledore. Lucius, however, remained unpredictable, opposed to Dumbledore but for his own reasons, and certainly no friend to Harry. Narcissa confirms that Lucius plans to intercept you in Diagon Alley, Augusta said. He wishes to assess you personally. Test me, you mean, Harry corrected. See if I'm worth allying with or should be considered an enemy. Precisely, Sirius confirmed. The Malfoys are hedging their bets. With Voldemort gone but rumors of his potential return circulating, they're trying to position themselves advantageously for any outcome. Harry considered this information thoughtfully. We can use that. Let Lucius approach me. A public conversation gives me the chance to establish myself as more than just the boy who lived, in the eyes of the traditionalist families. The planning continued for hours, detailing contingencies, timing, and specific roles for each ally. By the time they finished, the comprehensive strategy impressed even Ragnarok, who rarely showed admiration for wizard planning. You've grown into a remarkable young man, Harry Potter, the Goblin King said as the meeting concluded. Far from the frightened child who appeared in our halls 5 years ago. Harry bowed respectfully. Thanks to you and everyone here. I wouldn't have survived Dumbledore's manipulations without you all. Group hug. Sirius declared unexpectedly, throwing an arm around Harry and Neville. Goblins don't hug, Griphook stated flatly, though Harry could feel his blood brother's amusement through their bond. Their loss, Sirius replied cheerfully. Come on, boys. We've got a wizarding world to shake up. Harry's Hogwarts letter arrived precisely on his 11th birthday, delivered by a confused-looking owl to Sirius's London townhouse where Harry now lived most of the time. The address was tellingly specific, Mr. H. Potter, the Blue Bedroom 12, Grimmauld Place, London. At least they found you, Sirius commented, watching Harry examine the heavy parchment envelope with its emerald green ink. Though I'd love to have seen Minerva's face when the automatic addressing quill wrote that instead of your cupboard at the Dursleys. Harry broke the Hogwarts seal and removed the letter, scanning its contents with a small smile. Despite everything, a part of him was still excited about attending the school his parents had loved. Standard acceptance letter, he confirmed. Plus the materials list. He handed the second page to Sirius. Time for Diagon Alley. Sirius grinned. Operation Phoenix Fall, Phase 1 begins tomorrow. I've already alerted the others. The next morning dawned clear and bright, perfect weather for Harry's official debut in Wizarding Society. He dressed carefully in formal robes that blended wizard and goblin styling, with the Potter family crest visible on one shoulder and his silver blood Brotherhood band prominently displayed on his arm. His goblin-made wand rested in its forearm holster, concealed but accessible, while the Potter's sword hung at his hip in a magically lightened scabbard. Looking sharp, pup, Sirius approved, similarly dressed in formal black family robes. Ready to cause a sensation? Born ready, Harry replied with a grin that reminded Sirius painfully of James. They fled to the leaky cauldron at precisely 10 o'clock, time to ensure maximum visibility. As planned, they arrived simultaneously with Augusta and Neville Longbottom from another fireplace, creating an immediate impression of alliance between the ancient and noble houses. The pub fell silent as the patrons recognized first Sirius, then Harry. Someone gasped audibly when they noticed the sword at Harry's hip and the Blood Brotherhood band on his arm. Lord Black, Tom the barkeeper greeted respectfully. And young Mr. Potter. Welcome back to the wizarding world. Thank you, Tom, Harry replied with a polite nod. It's good to finally visit properly. Before anyone could approach them, the pub's door swung open to admit their goblin escort, 6 armored warriors led by Griphook, all carrying ceremonial weapons that were very much functional despite their decorative appearance. The silent pub grew somehow even quieter. Goblin guards in wizard spaces were extraordinarily rare, typically seen only for the highest-ranking ministry officials conducting official Gringotts business. Blood Brother, Griphook greeted Harry formally in English, though he winked almost imperceptibly. King Ragnarok sends his regards and these guards to ensure your safe passage. The Goblin Nation honors me, Harry replied in fluent gobbledygook, causing several onlookers to gasp again. Please convey my gratitude to His Majesty. They proceeded through the pub and into the back courtyard, aware of the whispering that erupted behind them. Sirius tapped the appropriate bricks with his wand, and the archway to Diagon Alley formed before them. And that, Sirius murmured as they stepped through, is how you make an entrance. Diagon Alley was bustling with shoppers, many of them likely Hogwarts students preparing for the new term. Heads turned immediately as their unusual procession moved toward Gringotts, 2 prominent wizarding families flanked by goblin warriors, with Harry Potter himself at the center. I count at least 3 people running off to spread the news, Neville noted quietly. 10 galleons says the prophet has a photographer here within 20 minutes. No bet, Harry replied, keeping his expression composed despite his amusement. Probably already on their way based on Tom's fluke call the moment we left. They reached Gringotts without incident, though the crowd of curious onlookers grew steadily. Inside the bank, they were immediately escorted past the waiting lines to a private meeting room where Ragnarok awaited them. Phase 1 proceeding as planned, the king noted with satisfaction. Word is spreading rapidly. Now for the shopping portion, Sirius said. Where first? Ollivanders, Harry decided. Best to get the most unpredictable element done early. Their group, slightly reduced as 4 of the goblin guards remained at Gringotts, made their way to the wandmaker's shop. The narrow, shabby storefront looked exactly as Sirius had described it, with a single wand on a faded purple cushion in the display window. A bell tinkled somewhere in the depths of the shop as they entered. Harry immediately sensed the ancient magic permeating the place, layers upon layers of wand lore and craftsmanship stretching back centuries. "I wondered when I'd be seeing you, Mr. Potter," came a soft voice. Garrick Ollivander stepped out from between the shelves, his wide, pale eyes shining like moons in the dim shop. "You have your mother's eyes. It seems only yesterday she was in here herself, buying her first wand. 10¼ inches long, swishy, made of willow. Nice wand for charm work." The wand maker's gaze shifted to Sirius. "Ah, Lord Black. Dogwood and dragon heartstring, 12 inches, particularly good for transfiguration. I trust it still serves you well." "Perfectly, Mr. Ollivander," Sirius confirmed. Ollivander's attention returned to Harry, his eyes narrowing slightly as they fixed on the silver band around Harry's arm. "Most unusual, a Goblin Blood Brotherhood band. I haven't seen one of those in, 7 centuries, at least." Then his eyes widened further. "And even more unusual, you already carry a wand." "No, not a wand as I would craft. Something different." Harry wasn't surprised by Ollivander's perception. He drew back his sleeve to reveal his goblin-made wand in its holster. "Goblin crafted, sir. A gift for my 9th birthday. May I?" Ollivander asked, his fingers twitching with obvious curiosity. After a moment's consideration, Harry removed the wand and handed it to the wand maker, who examined it with reverent fascination. "Extraordinary," Ollivander breathed. "Ancient oak, silver from the Potter mines, and a core of—" He closed his eyes, seeming to commune with the wand. "Phoenix feather freely given, basilisk fong, how remarkable, and your own blood as a binding agent. A true marriage of goblin and wizard wand lore." He handed the wand back carefully. "This wand is uniquely yours, Mr. Potter. It would work for no other wizard, not even poorly, as borrowed wands sometimes do. It simply would not function at all. That's why I'm here," Harry explained. "While my goblin wand serves me well, I understand the value of having a traditional wizard wand as well." Ollivander's eyes gleamed with professional interest. "Dual wielding is rarely practiced these days, a lost art from more dangerous times." Yes, let me see what calls to you." What followed was much as Sirius had predicted. Ollivander had Harry try wand after wand, each producing either no effect or chaotic results. Unlike the typical first-time wand buyer, however, Harry wasn't growing frustrated. He understood that his existing wand bond and unusual magical development made finding a compatible match more challenging. Finally, Ollivander paused, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "I wonder." He disappeared into the back of the shop and returned with a dusty box. "Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple." Harry accepted the wand, immediately feeling a warm response, though not the perfect resonance he had with his goblin wand. Golden sparks shot from the tip, nowhere near as impressive as his first bonding but respectable nonetheless. "Curious," Ollivander murmured. "Very curious." "What's curious?" Harry asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "The phoenix whose tail feather resides in your new wand gave just one other feather. It is curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar." Harry nodded calmly. "Voldemort's wand." Ollivander flinched at the name but confirmed with a nod. "The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. I think we can expect great things from you, just as he who must not be named did great things." "Terrible, yes, but great." "I plan to do great things too, Mr. Ollivander," Harry replied evenly. "But nothing terrible, I assure you." After paying for the wand, they continued their shopping, visiting Flourish and Blots for books, the apothecary for potion supplies, and Madame Malkin's for additional robes. At each stop, their unusual group drew stares and whispers. As Neville had predicted, a Daily Prophet photographer appeared within 15 minutes of their arrival in the alley, discreetly following them from shop to shop. Just magical menagerie left, Sirius noted as they exited Flourish and Blots. Though the Hogwarts letter only mentions a cat, owl, or toad. I was thinking about a snake, actually, Harry replied. Given my parseltongue ability. Another discovery of their years of preparation had been Harry's ability to speak to snakes, a talent initially concerning until they'd confirmed it was a Potter family trait, dormant for generations but occasionally manifesting, rather than something connected to Voldemort. That would certainly make a statement, Augusta commented dryly. Though perhaps too provocative for your first year. You're probably right, Harry acknowledged. An owl would be more practical anyway. As they headed toward Elop's Owl Emporium, a smooth voice called out, "Well, well. Lord Black and the young Potter heir. What an unexpected sight." Harry turned to see Lucius Malfoy approaching, his platinum blonde hair and black cane with silver snake head immediately identifying him. Beside him walked a boy Harry's age who could only be Draco, looking like a smaller version of his father. Lucius, Sirius acknowledged with a nod that was just barely civil. Shopping for Hogwarts as well? Indeed, Malfoy replied, his grey eyes fixed on Harry with calculating interest. My son Draco will be starting this year. He extended his hand to Harry. Lucius Malfoy, Mr. Potter. We've not had the pleasure. Harry accepted the handshake with perfect pure-blood etiquette. Mr. Malfoy. I've heard much about you from your wife. Narcissa speaks highly of your political acumen. Something flickered in Malfoy's eyes, surprise at the mention of his wife, perhaps, or at Harry's polished manners. You've met Narcissa. Several times, Harry confirmed. She and Sirius have been rebuilding their family connection. Cousin Andromeda joins us occasionally as well. This was clearly news to Lucius, whose grip tightened momentarily before he released Harry's hand. How progressive of you, Lord Black, to reconnect with family members across political divides. Sirius smiled thinly. Family magic runs deeper than politics, Lucius. Something the Blacks understood better than most. Lucius's gaze shifted to Griphook and the Goblin Guards. And these, unusual companions? Griphook is my blood brother, Harry stated directly, watching Malfoy's eyes widen fractionally. The Goblin Nation has been instrumental in rectifying certain irregularities regarding my inheritance and magical education. Irregularities? Malfoy repeated, clearly intrigued despite himself. Dumbledore's work, Harry said simply. I believe we share concerns about the headmaster's methods, though perhaps for different reasons. A moment of understanding passed between them. Whatever his other faults, Lucius Malfoy was no fool. He recognized immediately that Harry Potter was not the malleable Dumbledore pawn he'd likely expected. Perhaps we do, Malfoy acknowledged. He gestured to his son. Draco, greet Heir Potter properly. The blonde boy stepped forward, offering a formal bow that Harry returned equally. Potter. Father says you've been raised outside Wizarding Society. I'd be happy to help you understand how things work at Hogwarts. Harry smiled, recognizing the clumsy but sincere offer for what it was, Draco attempting to establish a connection on his father's orders while also genuinely seeking potential friendship. I appreciate that, Malfoy. I've had excellent tutors in wizarding customs, but first-hand perspective from our generation is always valuable. Draco seemed surprised but pleased by the response. Which house do you think you'll be in? I'll be in Slytherin, of course. All Malfoys are. I'm keeping an open mind, Harry replied diplomatically. Each house has its merits. Lucius placed a hand on his son's shoulder. We must continue our shopping, Draco. To the adults, he added, Lord Black, Lady Longbottom, a pleasure as always. Mr. Potter. I suspect your return to Wizarding Society will make this an interesting year indeed. As the Malfoys departed, Sirius muttered, that went better than expected. He's reassessing everything he thought he knew about me, Harry observed. Exactly as planned. You handled that perfectly, Augusta approved. Neither confrontational nor submissive. You've given Lucius something to think about. They completed their shopping without further notable encounters, though Harry did find a beautiful snowy owl that seemed to choose him as much as he chose her. He named her Hedwig, after a famous witch mentioned in one of his history texts. As they prepared to return to Grimmauld Place, Harry spotted the headline on a fresh edition of the Evening Prophet being sold at a nearby newsstand. Boy Who Lived returns. Harry Potter appears in Diagon Alley with Goblin Guard and Blood Brother, Phase 1 complete, Sirius said with satisfaction. Now we prepare for the final confrontation. The next 3 weeks passed in a flurry of preparation. Harry and Neville spent hours drilling with Sirius and their Goblin instructors, reviewing legal precedents with Augusta and Amelia, and finalizing contingency plans with Ragnarok. Harry also made time to meet with other future Hogwarts students who had been affected by Dumbledore's manipulations. Susan Bones, whose magical core had been subtly suppressed, had become a close friend alongside Neville. Luna Lovegood, whose memory charms had been removed, provided unique insights with her unconventional perspective. Even Draco Malfoy, following a cautious overture from Narcissa, joined them for a carefully neutral meeting at Gringotts. He's not what I expected, Draco admitted to Harry afterward, referring to their shared antagonist. Father always spoke of Dumbledore as a powerful but misguided wizard. Not as someone who would. He trailed off, still uncomfortable discussing the emotional suppression charms found in his magical core. Power corrupts, Harry replied simply. And he's had a lot of power for a very long time. 3 days before Harry was due to board the Hogwarts Express, the final custody hearing was scheduled at Gringotts. As a matter involving an heir to multiple ancient and noble houses, Potter through his father, Black through Sirius's formal adoption, and even Peveril through an ancient bloodline, the hearing fell under traditional wizarding law rather than standard ministry procedures. This crucial distinction allowed them to hold the proceedings at Gringotts under joint Goblin-Wizard oversight, with the Wizengamot represented by a 7-member panel rather than the full body. Most importantly, it required the use of magical verification methods for all testimony, methods Dumbledore could not easily circumvent. Harry dressed with particular care that morning, wearing formal Potter family robes with the Black and Peveril crest smaller but visible on each shoulder. His Goblin-made wand rested in its usual holster, while his Holly wand was placed in a secondary holster on his left forearm. The Potter sword hung at his hip, and his Blood Brotherhood band gleamed on his arm. Ready for this? Sirius asked, adjusting his own formal robes. Harry nodded, expression serious. We've been preparing for 5 years. It's time to finish it. They fled directly to Gringotts, where Griphook awaited them. The chamber is prepared, he informed them. Dumbledore arrived 10 minutes ago with McGonagall and Snape as his witnesses. Interesting choices, Sirius murmured. Minerva genuinely cares about Harry's welfare but is traditionally loyal to Albus. Snape, on the other hand, hated my father but loved my mother, Harry completed. And owes Dumbledore for keeping him out of Azkaban after the war. Complicated loyalties. They proceeded to the ceremonial chamber where the hearing would take place. Unlike the usual ministry courtrooms, this space balanced wizarding and goblin traditions. A circular table dominated the center, with the 7 Wizengamot representatives seated along one arc and 7 goblin officials along the other. In the center of the table rested a fist-sized stone of swirling silver and black, the Truth Stone. Dumbledore was already seated at one of 2 chairs facing the table. Despite his reduced political power, he still cut an impressive figure with his long silver beard and brightly colored robes, today a deep purple with silver stars. His blue eyes, typically twinkling, were sharp and alert as they followed Harry's entrance. For a moment, their eyes met directly for the first time in 5 years. Harry felt a subtle pressure against his mental shields, another skill he'd developed under Goblin tutelage, and firmly rebuffed the legilimency attempt. Dumbledore's eyes widened fractionally before he schooled his features back to benign interest. Harry, my boy, he greeted warmly, as though they were old friends. How wonderful to see you looking so well. Headmaster Dumbledore, Harry replied with perfect politeness and no warmth whatsoever. I'm not your boy, and we both know this meeting is neither wonderful nor friendly. Let's dispense with the pretense. A flicker of something, frustration, concern, passed over Dumbledore's face before his grandfatherly mask returned. As you wish. Though I hope we can move past these unfortunate misunderstandings. Misunderstandings? Sirius repeated incredulously. Is that what you call illegal guardianship, theft from a family vault, placing blocks on a child's magic, and abandoning him to abusive relatives against his parents' explicit wishes? Before Dumbledore could respond, Chief Warlock Tiberius Ogden called the hearing to order. With Augusta Longbottom, Amelia Bones, and surprisingly Narcissa Malfoy among the Wisengamot representatives, the panel was more balanced than Dumbledore might have hoped. This hearing concerns the final determination of guardianship for Harry James Potter, heir to the ancient and noble houses of Potter, Black, and Peverell. Ogden began formally. Lord Sirius Orion Black claims guardianship by right of godparenthood and the expressed wishes of James and Lily Potter as stated in their will. Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore claims guardianship by right of magical guardian status granted by the Ministry following the death of the Potters. Ragnarok, representing the Goblin contingent, spoke next. Before these claims are evaluated, the Goblin Nation wishes to present evidence regarding violations of the Potter estate and heir that bear directly on this case. For the next hour, Ragnarok and a team of Goblin legal experts presented meticulously documented evidence of Dumbledore's actions, the illegal sealing of the Potter will, the diversion of funds from the Potter vaults, the magical blocks placed on Harry, and the placement with the Dursleys against explicit instructions. Throughout the presentation, Dumbledore maintained his calm demeanor, occasionally shaking his head sadly as though disappointed by misinterpretations of his well-intentioned actions. When his turn came to respond, he spoke with the practiced eloquence that had swayed the Wisengamot for decades. Everything I did was for Harry's protection and the greater good of our world, he explained, his voice grave and sincere. The blood wards at his aunt's home provided the strongest possible protection against Voldemort's followers. The funds were used to maintain those wards and provide for Harry's future. The magical restrictions were temporary measures to prevent accidental magic from drawing attention from dark forces. It was a masterful performance, and Harry could see several of the Wisengamot members nodding along despite the evidence presented. If your intentions were so pure, Amelia Bones interjected, why not follow proper legal channels? Why secretly seal the will? Why not petition for official guardianship through the Wisengamot? The chaos following Voldemort's fall required swift action, Dumbledore replied smoothly. The Ministry was in disarray, Death Eaters were still at large, and Harry's safety was paramount. I acted with the authority granted to me as Chief Warlock in emergency situations. An authority that explicitly requires notification of the full Wisengamot within 7 days, Augusta pointed out sharply. Which never occurred. Dumbledore spread his hands apologetically. An oversight in the confusion of the time, for which I take full responsibility. But surely the outcome, Harry's survival and safety, justifies the procedural irregularities? The outcome, Harry said clearly, speaking for the first time since the presentations began, was 5 years of abuse and neglect at the Dursleys before my family magic literally tore through your blocks to save my life. All eyes turned to him, and Harry continued, his voice steady. I was starved, beaten, and kept in a cupboard under the stairs. I was told my parents were worthless drunks who died in a car crash. I had no knowledge of magic, my heritage, or my place in the wizarding world, exactly as you planned, Headmaster. You wanted me ignorant, malleable, and desperate for approval when I finally entered Hogwarts. Harry, I had no idea the Dursleys would treat you so poorly, Dumbledore responded, looking genuinely distressed. Had I known, you did know, Harry interrupted. The monitoring charms on the house reported my condition directly to devices in your office. Devices that were still active when I visited your office 2 years ago with representatives from the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Dumbledore's composure slipped momentarily. He hadn't known about that visit, arranged quietly by Amelia Bones to document the evidence. "I believe," said Ragnarok into the tense silence, "this would be an appropriate time to employ the Truth Stone." Ogden nodded gravely. As is traditional in disputed guardianship cases involving ancient and noble houses, all parties will place their hand upon the Truth Stone while making their final statements. The stone does not compel truth as Veritaserum does, but rather reveals falsehoods through magical manifestation that all present can witness. Harry watched Dumbledore carefully. This was the moment of truth, literally. The headmaster could not refuse without effectively admitting guilt, but submitting to the stone would reveal his lies. Of course, Dumbledore agreed after only a moment's hesitation. "Though I must register my concern that a child as young as Harry be subjected to such a powerful magical artifact. I have no objections to using the stone," Harry stated firmly. "I have nothing to hide." Ogden gestured to Dumbledore. "Headmaster, if you would begin." Dumbledore approached the stone and placed his hand upon it. The swirling silver and black patterns within glowed softly at his touch. "I, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, affirm that all actions I took regarding Harry Potter were for his protection and the greater good of the wizarding world. I had no knowledge of severe abuse by the Dursley family, and I placed restrictions on his magic only to prevent dangerous accidental outbursts. I utilized Potter family funds solely for Harry's benefit and security arrangements. I have always acted in Harry's best interests as I understood them." As he spoke, the stone's patterns shifted dramatically. Red streaks appeared, growing more prominent with each claim, until by the end, the stone was pulsing an angry crimson. "The stone indicates significant deception," stated the Goblin record-keeper formally. Murmurs broke out among the Wizengamot representatives. Even Dumbledore's supporters looked troubled by such a clear indication of dishonesty. "Lord Black," Ogden directed, "your statement please." Sirius stepped forward confidently and placed his hand on the stone, which immediately returned to its silver and black swirling. "I, Sirius Orion Black, affirm that I seek guardianship of Harry Potter in accordance with James and Lily Potter's expressed wishes in their will. I have recovered from my wrongful imprisonment and am fully capable of providing Harry with a loving home, appropriate education, and protection. I have no agenda beyond ensuring his well-being and happiness. I will respect his unique connections to the Goblin Nation and encourage his independent development as he approaches adulthood." Throughout Sirius's statement, the stone remained silver and black, occasionally flashing gold, an indication of particularly heartfelt truth. "The stone indicates truth," confirmed the record-keeper. "And finally, Mr. Potter," Ogden said gently. Harry stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment. He placed his hand on the stone, which warmed beneath his touch. "I, Harry James Potter, affirm that I wish to remain under the guardianship of my godfather, Sirius Black. The Goblin Nation saved my life when I was 6 years old, removing blocks on my magic and a soul fragment in my scar that Headmaster Dumbledore knew about but left in place. I have received education in both Goblin and Wizard traditions, and I approach Hogwarts with open eyes rather than as the ignorant, desperate child Dumbledore attempted to create. I seek justice for what was done to me and to others like me, children whose lives and magic were manipulated for Headmaster Dumbledore's greater good." The stone glowed with the purest gold throughout his statement, a reaction stronger than even Sirius had elicited. "The stone indicates absolute truth, with particular resonance," the record-keeper stated, sounding slightly awed. Dumbledore had gone very still during Harry's statement, particularly at the mention of the soul fragment. That piece of information had never been publicly revealed. "You removed the Horcrux," he said quietly, almost to himself. "So you did know what it was," Harry confirmed, his voice carrying in the suddenly silent chamber. "You left a piece of Voldemort's soul in my head, knowing what it was, planning to use me as bait or a weapon or a sacrifice." The assembled representatives looked horrified. Horcruxes were the darkest of magic, known to few but universally reviled. "You cannot understand the complexities," Dumbledore began. "I understand perfectly," Harry interrupted. You needed Voldemort truly defeated, not just temporarily disembodied. You believed a prophecy that said I was the only one who could defeat him. And you decided that meant I needed to die, taking the Horcrux with me, before Voldemort could be truly vanquished. Dumbledore's silence was confirmation enough. Several of the Wizengamot members looked physically ill at the implication. Chief Warlock, Amelia Bones said into the heavy silence, I believe we have sufficient evidence to render a decision regarding guardianship. Ogden nodded gravely. Indeed. The panel will confer. The Wizengamot and Goblin representatives huddled together, though the outcome seemed obvious to everyone present. After only a few minutes, Ogden turned back to face the chamber. This panel unanimously finds that guardianship of Harry James Potter rightfully belongs with his godfather, Sirius Orion Black, as specified in the will of James and Lily Potter. Furthermore, in light of the serious ethical and legal violations revealed during this hearing, we recommend a full investigation into Albus Dumbledore's actions by the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Dumbledore closed his eyes briefly, the first sign of genuine emotion he'd shown. When he opened them, he looked directly at Harry. I truly believed I was acting for the greater good, he said softly. The prophecy was self-fulfilling once you acted on it, Harry completed. A competent divination expert would have told you that. You chose your interpretation and forced reality to conform to it, regardless of who suffered in the process. What happens now? Dumbledore asked, looking suddenly much older than his considerable years. Justice, Ragnarok answered. The Goblin Nation has waited 5 years for this moment. Our declaration of war against you personally, not against wizardkind as a whole, is hereby resolved through this legal victory rather than bloodshed. You will make financial restitution to the Potter vaults for all funds illegally removed, plus interest. You will resign from your position as headmaster of Hogwarts, effective immediately. Impossible, Dumbledore protested. The school year begins in 3 days. The disruption to students should have been considered before you committed these acts, Augusta interrupted coldly. Minerva McGonagall is perfectly capable of assuming the position until a permanent replacement is appointed. And if I refuse? Dumbledore challenged, a hint of his power returning to his bearing. Then, Amelia said calmly, I will have no choice but to arrest you based on the evidence presented today. Theft from an ancient and noble house alone carries a minimum 5-year sentence in Azkaban. The illegal magical bindings on a minor would add another 10. Do you prefer that outcome, Albus? The fight seemed to drain from Dumbledore. He looked again at Harry, something like regret in his blue eyes. You were meant for extraordinary things, Harry. The prophecy still stands, whether we wish it or not. Voldemort will return. I know, Harry replied simply. The difference is, I'll face him with allies by choice, not as your sacrificial weapon. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Perhaps that will make all the difference. He turned to Ogden. I accept the terms. I will resign effective immediately and make full restitution to the Potter estate. Then this hearing is concluded, Ogden declared. Guardianship of Harry James Potter is formally recognized as residing with Lord Sirius Black. The Goblin declaration of war against Albus Dumbledore is resolved through legal means. And may Merlin help us all with the changes coming to our world. The platform at King's Cross Station was crowded with students and parents when Harry, Sirius, and Griphook arrived on September 1st. Though Dumbledore's resignation and the reasons behind it had been front-page news for 3 days, the excitement around Harry Potter attending Hogwarts remained intense. Remember, Sirius said, adjusting Harry's jacket needlessly, McGonagall will be fair but cautious. The other professors will be curious about you. And the students will have all sorts of preconceptions based on what they've heard, Harry completed with a grin. I know, Pat Foot. We've gone over this a dozen times. Sirius smiled ruefully. Just being a proper nervous guardian sending his kid off to school for the first time. You'll visit at Hogsmeade weekends, Harry reminded him. And I'll mirror call you twice a week. And I'll be checking in through our bond regularly, Griphook added. The Brotherhood allows me to sense if you're in danger, no matter where you are in the castle. Harry nodded gratefully. Though confident in his abilities and preparation, he wasn't naive about the challenges ahead. Dumbledore might be gone, but many of his allies remained at Hogwarts. And the former headmaster's warning about Voldemort's eventual return weighed on him. There's Neville and Augusta, Harry noted, spotting them through the crowd. And I think that's Susan with her aunt near the train. Go on then, Sirius encouraged. Find a compartment with your friends. Just remember, have fun, learn everything I can, make connections across all houses, and don't let anyone push me around, Harry recited dutifully. I will. Sirius pulled him into a fierce hug. Your parents would be so proud of you, Harry. I know I am. As am I, blood brother, Griphook added, clasping Harry's forearm in the Goblin warrior's gesture of respect. Harry returned both gestures, then grabbed the handle of his trunk, specially crafted by Goblin artisans, with multiple magically expanded compartments, and made his way toward the train. Hedwig hooted softly from her cage, seemingly excited for the journey ahead. As he moved through the crowd, Harry spotted a family of redheads gathered around a plump, kind-looking woman. Packed with muggles, of course, he heard her say loudly, and something about her manner made him pause. Excuse me, Harry said politely, approaching the woman. Did I overhear you mention platform 9 3/4? Yes, dear, the woman replied warmly. First time at Hogwarts? Ron's new, too. She gestured to the youngest boy, a gangly, freckled redhead who nodded awkwardly to Harry. Thank you for the help, Harry said with a smile. I'm Harry, by the way. Harry Potter. The expected reaction followed, widened eyes, glances at his forehead where the lightning scar was just visible through his carefully arranged hair. But unlike most people who recognized him, the woman didn't immediately pepper him with questions or gawk inappropriately. Molly Weasley, dear, she introduced herself. These are my children, Percy, he's a prefect this year, Fred and George, watch out for those two, Ron, as I mentioned, and my daughter Ginny, who starts next year. Harry greeted them each politely, noting the twins' mischievous expressions, Percy's pompous demeanor, Ron's obvious curiosity, and Ginny's wide-eyed shyness. Would you like to share a compartment, Ron? Harry offered. I'm meeting some friends, but there's plenty of room. Ron brightened immediately. Yeah, thanks. After saying goodbye to Mrs. Weasley, who insisted on straightening Ron's jacket and removing a smudge from his nose, they boarded the train together. Harry led the way to a compartment where Neville was already seated with Susan Bones. Ron Weasley, Harry introduced, this is Neville Longbottom and Susan Bones. Friends of mine. Neville and Susan greeted Ron warmly, and they all settled in as the train prepared to depart. Harry noticed Ron's slightly uncertain expression as he observed the easy familiarity between the others. We've known each other a few years, Harry explained, correctly interpreting Ron's confusion. Family connections and such. Oh, Ron said, nodding. Makes sense. My family's mostly kept to ourselves. Dad works at the ministry, but we don't do much of the, fancy pureblood stuff. Nothing fancy about us, Neville assured him. Just kids who happened to meet before Hogwarts. Their conversation was interrupted by the compartment door sliding open to reveal a bushy-haired girl with rather large front teeth, already dressed in her Hogwarts robes. Has anyone seen a toad? A boy named Trevor has lost one, she said in a bossy sort of voice. Trevor is my toad, Neville corrected with a smile. And he's not lost, he's in his special habitat in my trunk. But thanks for looking. The girl blinked, momentarily thrown off her script. Oh. Well, that's good then. She hesitated, clearly wanting to join the conversation but unsure how. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. Harry Potter, Harry replied, gesturing to the empty seat beside Susan. Would you like to join us? Hermione's eyes widened. Are you really? I know all about you, of course. You're in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and great wizarding events of the 20th century. All of which contain significant inaccuracies, Harry noted dryly. Since no one actually interviewed me or my guardian for those books. Hermione looked startled, then thoughtful as she sat down. That's a very good point, actually. Primary sources are always more reliable than secondary accounts. Exactly, Harry agreed. For instance, did you know that until 3 days ago, Hogwarts was headed by a man who illegally sealed my parents' will, stole from my family vaults, placed blocks on my magic, and left me with abusive relatives against my parents' explicit wishes? Hermione gasped. That was Headmaster Dumbledore. It was in the Prophet, but I thought. She trailed off, looking troubled. I've read all about him being this great wizard who defeated Grindelwald and discovered 12 uses of dragon's blood. He did those things, Harry confirmed. But power corrupts, and he had a lot of power for a very long time. That's why history books need to be read critically, especially when they're about living people. Hermione looked at Harry with new respect. That's very wise. I'll keep that in mind while reading. As the train pulled away from the station, their compartment dynamics settled into comfortable conversation. Ron talked about his large family and love of Quidditch, Hermione about all the spells she'd already tried, Neville about his passion for herbology, and Susan about her aunt's work at the ministry. Harry mostly listened, enjoying the normal interaction after years of preparation and political maneuvering. Their journey was interrupted only once more when Draco Malfoy appeared at their compartment, flanked by 2 large boys he introduced as Crabbe and Goyle. Potter, Malfoy greeted, his tone carefully neutral. Quite the diverse group you've assembled. Malfoy, Harry replied with equal neutrality. Care to join us? There's still room. Draco hesitated, clearly torn between his father's instructions to establish a connection with Harry and the unexpected presence of a Weasley and a Muggleborn in the compartment. Perhaps another time, he said finally. We've got a compartment further up. You're welcome to visit if you'd like. After Malfoy departed, Ron looked at Harry incredulously. You know Malfoy? We've met, Harry said simply. He's complicated. His father's definitely problematic, but Draco himself, let's just say I try not to judge people by their families or their houses before I know them personally. As darkness fell outside the windows, they changed into their school robes. Harry felt a growing excitement beneath his calm exterior. Despite everything, Dumbledore's manipulations, the prophecy hanging over him, the knowledge that Voldemort might one day return, he was genuinely looking forward to Hogwarts. Not as the ignorant, desperate child Dumbledore had tried to create, but as someone prepared, supported, and aware of his own worth. The train slowed and finally stopped. A voice echoed through the compartments, "We will be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes' time. Please leave your luggage on the train, it will be taken to the school separately." Harry exchanged glances with Neville and Susan. "Ready?" he asked with a grin. "Born ready," Neville replied, echoing Harry's words from days earlier. They filed out onto the dark platform, where a lamp came bobbing over the heads of the students and a booming voice called, "Fur's years. Fur's years over here." A massive bearded man towered over the sea of students. "Come on, follow me, any more Fur's years? Mind your step, now." As they followed the giant man down a steep, narrow path toward the boats that would carry them across the lake, Harry felt the weight of his Potter sword at his hip, the comfort of both wands in their holsters, and the warm connection to Griphook through their blood brotherhood. He was Harry Potter, not just the boy who lived or the child of prophecy, but his own person with his own choices to make. And as Hogwarts Castle came into view, its windows sparkling against the starry sky, he knew he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The Goblin War was over. His education was just beginning. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.